Like every time I see Max Homa on the range, he looks like he's just looking for a hole to go crawl in. And when I see Scotty, he's walking around like his pants are unzipped.
Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog, the U.S. Open research show, and some picks to go along with it. I got three fabulous guests lined up for today. Keith Stewart's going to be doing a deep dive with me on the course. Alex Blickle, who played Oakmont as a part of the Pennsylvania Open in 2015, the year before it hosted the U.S. Open, which Dustin Johnson won, is going to be on, and currently top 10 in the FedEx Cup standings. Andrew Novak, who is in the field this week, is going to be on the show breaking down his assessment of what it's going to require to compete at Oakmont this week. You can catch the full Andrew Novak interview on tomorrow's show, where we talk about his season, the U.S. Open, the upcoming Open Championship, and his Ryder Cup aspirations. And on Saturday, I have a special show coming out with me and a PGA professional playing Oakmont on a simulator, going hole by hole, showing where the pros actually want to miss, and you get to roast my swing the entire time because it's not good. I'll tell you that right now. His, very good. Mine, not so much, but it's an interesting discussion to have with a pro playing it from the tips. Obviously, much easier on a simulator than we're going to see in real life, but it's a fun conversation talking through some of the players and their specific misses and why that might be beneficial or detrimental to their performance at Oakmont for the 2025 U.S. Open. I want to remind everyone to smash the like and sub to the channel. In the comment section, you give me your early winner for the U.S. Open. You'll get into a draw for a pair of two boxes, let's say, of Pro VX Underdog balls. I will send those out to you. Plus, I might have some more equipment giveaways coming next week. So if you just do the giveaway right now, then you're going to be in the draw for that one as well. There's going to be cash giveaways as well. So give me the winner in the comment section. If you want extra ways to get extra ballots into that draw, subscribe, rate, and review on Apple and Spotify. That always goes a long way. Sub to the free newsletter. We'll have more detailed written info coming out, plus all the hot links throughout the course of the week. That's down in the description right now. And please, anytime that you see one of these shows or an article pertaining to the U.S. Open on social media, primarily X, at the PME, you share that around, you get ballots into the draw. Who doesn't want some crisp? I used some today. Some crisp Pro VXs with the Underdog insignia on it. If you use code Mayo right now at Underdog, you get the deposit bonus of up to $1,000. You get a free pick for the U.S. Open, and one of the key features to Underdog right now as a part of the fantasy game, which is available in almost every state, California, New York, Florida, and Texas, all in that mix, to make the cut and to miss the cut plays. You can put 8 of those together. I know people are always asking me where you can play those, and I love the to miss the cuts for the U.S. Open because it's a full field of 156 players, and only the top 60 and ties end up making the cuts. And because Oakmont is prepared to play so difficult, we are going to see some blow-ups from some big players. You're going to take a look at the top 10 on the odds board, and like 3 or 4 of those guys are likely to miss the cut. We see it every year at the U.S. Open. So no matter how great you feel about a player, unless it's Scotty, honestly, if Bryson and Rory miss the cut, I wouldn't be stunned. That's not going to go well for one of my bets, and I really hope that doesn't happen, but it's certainly on the table just based on how out of control things can get at Oakmont. If you shoot even par, you're probably going to be inside the top 5 this week. That is how difficult it's going to play. I get the crew's assessment on that a little bit later on of what they think the winning score is going to be and the skills that they need to do before we get into the research. You can always jump around to the time codes as well, but I'm going to hit you with a few facts about the U.S. Open right now. It is the first time it's been played at Oakmont since Dustin Johnson won at 4 under par in 2016. Going back to that year, there was massive weather delays. Dustin didn't actually tee off until Friday for his first round, almost got both of his rounds in, and he striped it the entire week. Came in excellent form, and that translated through. It is shocking he didn't win by more strokes that week with the way that he drove the ball. Went a little bit off the rails in the third round for him, but then he got it back together in the fourth round. Shane Lowry actually went in with a pretty significant lead into the final day of the U.S. Open. He shot 7 under in the third round on the Saturday at Oakmont, which there's going to be a few of those scores out there this week. I don't know if anyone actually shoots a 63 like Lowry did, but there's going to be a 65, a 66 in an isolated round. That's great. You don't necessarily need something like that to win the tournament. It's all about keeping it together when things start going off the rails. And that's going to be so important this week. And we're going to try to talk through the different ways that you can do that. Accuracy being at the very top of that list. That's not necessarily how we think about U.S. Opens. The past 5, 6, 7 U.S. Opens, just sort by driving distance, take that guy. 3 of the top 10 are going to be inside the top 5. That's just how the U.S. Open goes. And frankly, I think that's how it's probably going to end up going again this week, because there are misses that you can have here that are much better than certain other misses. As Blickle will point out a little bit later on, you are much better with a big miss deep left, 20 yards from the fairway, than you are just simply rolling through these firm and fast fairways and being nestled a yard off, because that is in the deep, deep rough. Where you want to hit it is where the people are standing, because your ball might actually sit up in the 5.5-inch rough. You thought the rough was bad at Muirfield Village. It's going to be an inch to 2 inches longer this week. And there is a little bit of rain in the forecast right now and earlier on in the week before it starts to dry out throughout the course of the week. So super long rough mixed with wetness is a recipe for disaster for a lot of these guys. Hence why, listen, if you can keep it in the short crash, you're going to hit a lot of greens in regulation on these gigantic greens. But if you can hit it farther down, even if you miss the fairway, you're just simply going to have shorter clubs to try to hack it on and maybe roll it up on some of these greens. We see that in the simulator preview a lot, where there are certain holes where you can roll it up and other ones with false fronts where you're going to have to really figure out where you want to get to your key distance to lay up, especially even on the second par 5 on the backside, where very few people, if any, are actually going to get there into. Bryson might be able to get there, Rory might be able to get there, but Dustin didn't get there in any of the 4 rounds in 2016, and dude led the field in driving distance and was up there in accuracy as well, and he still couldn't get there. Almost got there in round number 2, but didn't get there in any of the 4 rounds. So Bryson has more distance, Rory has more distance, hell, Minwoo has more distance than Dustin did at that time right now. So maybe some guys are going to be getting there, but it's certainly not an eagle hole by any stretch of the imagination. That would be number 4. Number 4 is a scoreable hole, and some of these are scoreable holes. They can generate birdies, especially depending on the pin position. Number 2 comes to mind. Number 17 could be drivable on certain days. It was in the 3rd round of the 2016 U.S. Open that those guys could just take they were hitting like 5-wood at it. And the bailout is to the bunker on the left, depending on where the pin position is, of course. But you can get up and down there pretty easily. But if you miss that bunker and you get nestled down in the rough, you can be making bogey or double bogey pretty easily as well. There's going to be an element of luck in terms of drawing good lies out of the rough and just getting a few breaks, whether it bounces out, rolls into a bunker. Bunkers are the miss at this course. Not so much the pew bunkers, the fairway bunkers. Those aren't so good. But the greenside bunkers, unless you are short-sided from the pin, that is going to be the preferred miss unless you can come up short of the green and land in the fairway for a lot of the pros this week. The more you can avoid this awful rough, the better off that you're going to be. And you're going to be able to visualize that yourself right now if you're watching this video with this flyover. Oakmont CC is playing as a par 70, 7,372 yards, which is longer, almost 100 to 150 yards longer than we saw in 2016. POA greens, 8,300 square foot greens. These are massive. 210 bunkers littered around the grounds. No water hazards, no water on site, but the drainage ditches are out there and they won't have any water in them. You can play in them as a penalty area, but it's not going to be a whole lot of fun. They're very covered in fescue. No club in America has hosted the U.S. Open more than Oakmont. This will be the 10th appearance and 10th time that the national championship has been played here just outside of Pittsburgh. Oakmont's famed Church Pew bunker lies between the 3rd and 4th fairways. It's 100 yards long and 40 yards wide and features 12 grass-covered traversing ridges that resemble church pews. That's why they're called it. The 2021 U.S. Amateur was also held at Oakmont. Jacob Bridgman and Ricky Castillo that year both made the round of 16. Joe Highsmith and Ryan Gerard both made the round of 32. And Ryan Gerard is a name that you'll see pop up when we do the research a little bit later on. He's all over difficult course playing, and at least he does have some experience here, albeit as an amateur, but in USGA conditions. Bridgman was T7 after stroke play at -4, and Highsmith was T9 after stroke play at -3. Taking a look at the course, there are 4 par 3s, the average distance, 227 yards. A lot of that being wrapped up in the super long par 3. That is number 8. That is 289 yards. It's only 23 yards shorter than the aforementioned number 17 this week. In 2016, Dustin Johnson parred his final 7 par 3s of the week. Just trying to figure it out and treading water on the par 3s and maybe trying to steal one somewhere along the line is how you want to go. Par 4s, there's 12 of them. The average distance is only 436 yards, and this is where the hidden distance of Oakmont comes into play, because there is a few short ones. Now, a lot of them, you're going to have a decision of whether you want to fly one of those fescue-infested penalty areas or not. So you're going to hit iron off some of these tees, maybe a 5-wood for some of the field, or you might just be Bryson or Rory and say, hey, I can clear that, especially if the wind's at my back, and they go full hog with the driver and get themselves 50 yards from the hole. We've seen Bryson do that a ton recently, and it doesn't turn out to be a great success at all. He just doesn't, his proximity from 100 yards and in was just so terrible at the PGA Championship. I think that will be less of a thing this week because simply putting it to 35 feet and 2-putting is such an advantage, and that's essentially the strategy at Oakmont that will play to his favor a lot, where he doesn't need to go out and find birdies. Par is going to be good enough, and then he can beat up on these par 5s. Primarily number 4. The 2 par 5s, the average distance is 622 yards. Both par 5s are on the front half of the respective 9s. This tournament isn't going to get a dramatic par 5 late. You're going to have to, the scoreable, maybe game-changing hole is going to be number 17, as that could theoretically be an eagle hole with the perfect drive, and it can go the other way as well. Dustin Johnson on the par 5s. In 2016, made 7 pars and a Saturday birdie, although he 3-putted number 4 both times. He was on for eagle and left himself about 80 feet and 3-putted both of those times. Just to circle back to the par 4s for a minute, Dustin played the front 9 par 4s at even par for the week, and both 9 start. You have a 488-yard par 4, then a 461-yard par 4. That's how they start, and then they end with super long ones, 472 and 502. If you are not beating up and hitting your 175-plus club well this week, especially from the fairway, I mean, there's a lot of these, especially these long par 4s, that will become 3-shot par 4s if you get nestled down in that rough. There's just going to be no chance with a long iron to fly it there and hell, even stop it there. These are firm, probably the fastest greens that the players are going to have seen all year long. So you're going to be chunking it up. When we get to the research a little bit later on, I'm going to try to figure out who the best players are from 50 to 100 yards, 100 to 25, just because you're going to see more shots from that range if the rough really does eat up a lot of these clubs and players can merely advance the ball from the rough or some of these terrible bunkers, that's the range that they're going to be in to save par. So pairing that up with inside 10-foot putting is going to be essentially key. Spoiler alert, Matthew Pavon, a guy who came top 5 at last year's U.S. Open at Pinehurst, is someone who has done that incredibly well over the course of his career in U.S. Opens to date. He's only played in 3 of them, but it's been pretty good for him so far. Some more course notes. The turn could be a leverage spot over the weekend. Holes number 9 and number 10 have a cumulative double or worse rate that is greater than their collective under par rate. So survive 9 and 10 and you can be good to go. Holes 13, 14, and 17 are 3 of the 4 most birdied holes on the course, along with number 4, all over 16%. If you like them in the form of a chaser, you could see the streak being put together, and that could lead to the clubhouse. I wouldn't be trying to play any sort of birdie streaks in DFS this week, though. That's just not something for the U.S. Open. Just take your pars and get it a Dodge. Sneak out a birdie or 2 and just don't make some double bogeys and you're going to be fine. In 2016, the DraftKings scoring didn't match cleanly with finishing position. Jason Day and Zach Johnson both tied for 8th on the final leaderboard, but Day scored 21.7% more DraftKings points than Zach Johnson. Reminder to all of my good friends north of the border in Canada, if you live not in Ontario, the rest of the country, you can take advantage of some sweet deals at coolbet.com right now. Obviously, they're going to have the PME boost throughout the course of the week. I think I'm going to get them to pump up Bryson. That's where I'm going to land to get him up to 10 to 1, 11 to 1, 13 to 1. Fingers crossed on that one. No guarantees on the 13 to 1. But if you are with Coolbet, you can have access to those if you live in Canada outside of Ontario. Plus, if you hit the description right now, you can get a deposit bonus of up to $200, and there is a contest to opt into. All you got to do is opt into it and bet on golf. Easy enough, probably something you're going to do anyway, but you opt into that contest with the link that I have down in the description right now, and you put yourself into a free trip for you and some friends to go play the Cabot courses, Cabot Cliffs and Cabot Links later on in the summertime, airfare, hotels, the rounds at the course. It's going to be awesome. I suggest that you go into this, so go use it at coolbet.com right now. Looking back at the past winners of the U.S. Open, Bryson won at 6 under a year ago at Pinehurst, beating Rory coming down the stretch. I attempted the Bryson shot out of the sand at Pinehurst earlier this year. Did not go well. Wyndham Clark won at -10 at LA Country Club. At Brookline in 2022, Matt Fitzpatrick won at -6. Rahm won at -6. At Torrey Pines, and then at Winged Foot, Bryson won at -6. The last time that Oakmont was hosting the U.S. Open, Dustin Johnson won at -4 in 2016. The first round leader that year was Andrew Landry. It was his only 60 for the week. Dustin Johnson fired a 67 to open and just played immaculately that round, just couldn't make enough birdie putts to go through, but it was an easy 67. But his worst round of the week was a 71. He just had the highest floor, and that's what you're looking for this week. You're looking for the players with the highest floors possible. Lee Westwood was playing great until Sunday, and then he shot an 80 and took himself well out of contention. Last year, albeit at a different course, you'll see that Rory shot a 65, tied with Patrick Cantlay for first round leader. Ludwig was one shot back at 66. And just thinking about how the odds have worked at the U.S. Open over the years, Bryson won last year as a 20 to 1 on the odds board. Wyndham Clark was 100 to 1 at LA Country Club, but now we're back into the more classical designs. LA Country Club, not a classical design, not a classical U.S. Open course. So that, shockingly, was not that much of an outlier for that year. That kind of makes a lot of sense. But you see 20 to 1 winning. Matt Fitzpatrick wins at 30 to 1 in 2022. It was the best he was playing another old style course. Dustin won this event at 12 to 1 in 2016. Rahm won as the second favorite on the board in 2021 as well at Torrey Pines. So it's been a lot of chalk at the top of the board, and we reflect a little bit more on what we saw, what we're going to see in terms of the stats and who's playing well coming in. The top 3 guys at the top of the betting board are the ones that are going to pop up most often, unsurprisingly. It's where we can mine value elsewhere that's going to be important. But before we figure out what's going to go in to that research, we got to talk to guys that are either playing in this tournament, have played in a tournament at this course, or a PGA professional that goes to the course every week and gets a sense of what's going on behind the scenes. That's all coming up. Andrew Novak first, right after this. I was having some problems sleeping. When anyone has little kids, that's probably going to be the case. They'll come up, wake you up in the middle of the night for no real apparent reason. So you're waking up, you're going back to sleep, you're waking up, going back to sleep. It's not the best sleep. I put my Apple Watch on and tried to track my sleep tracker. It was not going well. A lot of that changed once I got a Helix mattress, however, because I was able to customize it to both what I want, what my wife wants, and now we're sleeping throughout the night. The little noises that would just normally wake you up when you're not sleeping well, no longer the case for me. No more back pain either, because I'm actually sleeping on a mattress that is perfect for what my back demands, which is a lot because I have a terrible back. The one that I had before my Helix mattress, I spent a lot of money on it. It was bad after like 2 years. It had like the divot in it from where I sleep. It was unflippable. It was a horrendous waste of money. Not only is the Helix mattress I have now way better, it was also significantly cheaper. And it just showed up to my door in a box. Very easy to get onto my bed frame and just start using right away. So you can have all your problems solved with a Helix mattress as well. So you can go to helixsleep.com/mayo for 20% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/mayo for 20% off site-wide. Be sure to enter my name at the checkout so they know that I sent you. helixsleep.com/mayo. I want you to think about two things. One, what makes your father special? Number two, what makes all fathers the same? The answer to number two is that they are impossible to buy Father's Day gifts for. Who knows what your dad needs? But I can tell you one thing that the vast majority, almost all of fathers enjoy: steak. Barbecuing. It's perfect. When it comes to Father's Day, some things never change. A recent survey shows 75% of Americans agree there's no better way to spend Father's Day than grilling with the family. So, shop omahasteaks.com and give your dad the legendary Heartland quality he deserves. Plus, my listeners get an extra $35 off with promo code MAYO at checkout. Omaha Steaks has been America's original butcher since 1917. A family-owned company with over 100 years of expertise in the meat industry. They also carry mouth-watering burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, dessert, and easy-to-prepare comfort food. This Father's Day, give Dad the world's best steak experience with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for a guaranteed perfect gifts that deliver legendary quality. For an extra $35 off, use promo code MAYO at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com and an extra $35 off with promo code MAYO at checkout. See site for details. Have you been up to Oakmont ever?
I have. I played with my caddy there one time. I've only been once, but he's been there a good bit. He grew up not far from there. He went to college right near there. He club caddied there a little bit before he ended up caddying professionally. So he knows the place well. He is very excited, and we are going to have a large following of his friends coming out. So it's going to be a good time.
Like, what are your expectations going into it of how the course is going to play? Obviously, you're going in to win. We all know that. But
Yep.
like, is there a specific strategy at a U.S. Open that you have to consider? Because I was thinking about just even watching Memorial over the weekend, and there was a couple shots where Scotty he was in the rough, he was buried, and there was even one where I think he was like 212 or something away. And I think the wind was gusting up on the Saturday, and I forget what hole it was, but the pin was on the left, and there was just a shorter corridor to get over the water onto the right. I think it was actually the par 5 on the back. He's just like, nah, I'm just going to put it to 45 feet and 2-putt. Like, it doesn't feel like there's enough guys out there that, I mean, at Memorial, it's one thing to do. You kind of have to do it at the U.S. Open a lot of the time. Even going back and watching what Dustin did in 2016, that was his entire game plan. It's like, I'm going to hit it to 45 feet and 2-putt. Maybe I'll make one.
Yep. I mean, if you par every hole at Oakmont for 72 holes, like, it is almost guaranteed you will win. Based on the fact Dustin won at what? 3 under? Well, he had the penalty. Whatever.
Well, we don't know if that was a real
whatever
penalty.
he was.
He was only assessed after he had enough strokes to have it.
He finished like under par though. I'm pretty sure.
Like,
the members
on the
at
Saturday,
Oakmont
I
people
actually watched the Saturday. Lowry shot 7 under on Saturday.
Yeah, the people at Oakmont do not want under par winning. They're gonna make sure that over par is winning this Open. Pars are fantastic. I don't care what hole it is out there. Pars are fantastic at Oakmont. After playing Memorial, I'm guessing the rough will be somehow worse than that, which that might have been. The other U.S. Open I played was at Brookline, and I would have said the rough at Memorial this week was probably worse than what we saw at Brookline. I'm guessing Oakmont will be worse than that. So just don't ever hit a bad shot for 72 holes, because you'll probably not enjoy the rest of the hole after that.
You'd much rather be in the bunker, wouldn't you?
Oh, for sure. But that goes for, I mean, like Torrey Pines. That's true. I mean, any places where the rough is that bad, as long as the bunker lips aren't horrible. The thing with Oakmont is that they have thought about that. They know what they're doing with the bunkers. You have church pews, you have steep faces, you have a lot of like kind of smaller bunkers or sectioned off bunkers. Like you're not going to just fall in a bunker and have 30 yards to a lip so you can just hit up clean. Typically there's some added element like, okay, you're going to have to think about a lip here, you're going to have a funny stance, you're going to have something. Like they don't ever want you to really get away with one.
At Memorial this week, like when you got it into the rough, what was the hack it out versus you could actually hit your ball like ratio? Because I remember last year at Pinehurst, I think it was Scotty who said it. Like when it goes, and I played it earlier this year. It was just, like when it goes into that wire grass. Like a
Yep.
lot of the time, it's fine. Sometimes you're absolutely fucked. And
Yeah.
like, how is the rough going to play? Like, are you going to have? Although the rough might be long, obviously, if it's not sitting down all the way, you can probably still get it into
I'm
the air.
not
It's not a
I'm
hack
probably
out.
not the right guy to ask for more. I was chopping every time, but then I'd go like watch coverage and like I'd be watching Ben or Scotty, and it'd just be like hitting on the green, and I'm like, what are they doing to these golf balls to like have lies? Where I mean, I was like struggling to advance it 100 yards a few times. I mean, I had one I laid up on Thursday on 11, and I was 2 feet left of the first cut. I had 90 yards to the pin for my third shot. It's par five. I missed the fairway on my layup. And I didn't feel super confident about it, but I'm 90 yards away. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to give it a rip. I'm going to try and get it on the green. I'm 90 yards. It dribbled into the water hazard, which is what, 15, 20 yards short of the green. I mean, full swing wedge, it went 50 yards. Maybe. I mean, the rough was insane at Memorial this week. Obviously, the rain didn't help either. Made it that much worse. But I almost never had just clean. Oh, you can hit this. Maybe I would have said like 75-25, like 75 just chopping. Find it hard to believe somebody's going to fake it around Oakmont and win one. So
Yeah.
it's
Like,
going to be some good golfers at the top of that leaderboard.
I was looking at the 2016 leaderboard. It really struck me as strange. Some of the name, like thinking about U.S. Opens and like
Mhm.
looking at this list of names and just kind of like side eyeing it for a second
It-
because Dustin led the field in driving, distance, and basically accuracy too. That's why he ended up winning. He didn't even
Yeah.
putt particularly well that week, but of the guys who mashed the ball the most distance wise off the tee, most of them ended up near the top of the leaderboard, where most weeks that's going to be the case, especially at US Opens. That's going to be the case. But then you have like Jim Furyk and Zach Johnson. So the
Andrew
emphasis on
Landry.
accuracy was there too, even from the
Yeah.
shorter hitters. But like, if you had to pick one skill this week, would it be hit the ball the farthest in the field or hit every fairway?
I still think you're going to gain more of an advantage from hitting every fairway. Um, I think course conditions like change things. So like last time they played Oakmont, scores were super low first couple rounds because it rained a ton. Like I don't even remember if they started on time. Like they had really bad rain. They were like behind schedule. They were finishing Thursday's round on Friday, Friday's round on Saturday. Like it was the whole thing got super messed up because there was a ton of rain, which softened up the course a lot. That also kind of leads in like it makes it a little easier for the bombers because the rough gets a little bit worse when it rains. So if you have only an 8-iron into a hole or a 9-iron into the hole from the rough versus a 6 or a 5-iron, that makes a huge difference. You had a guy, I think Andrew Landry was up there through 2 rounds. He was like leading it, but I mean, I think he was just going like full blackout with the putter. But if we get a firm and fast week, I think that opens it up a little bit more for the field at Oakmont, just because it won't play as long. So if you're in the rough, potentially, you know, say I have like a 7-iron out of the rough or an 8-iron versus a 5-iron, like that could be the difference of getting it to the front edge and having it easier up and down versus just taking a wedge and chopping it down the fairway.
Bringing in Keith Stewart from Read the Line. You're becoming a mainstay on these major preview shows that I do because you've been to all these places and you're a pro, so we got to get your insight on all of this. You're joining a collection of people today. We got a little bit of Andrew Novak on the show, some Alex Blickle, 2 guys who have played the course. Alex actually played it as the Pennsylvania Open the year before in 2015, before it was at the US Open. But do you think it's weird that This is going to be a tournament that we all enjoy to watch because we all expect carnage, how hard it's going to be. Not a super fun tournament to talk about going into it, is it?
You know, that's a great first question because, to be quite honest, there's not going to be a lot to talk about until these leaderboards start to break. The fact of the matter is that this is like a perfect marriage between the USGA and the membership at Oakmont. When you think about it, no other golf course has hosted this event, the national championship 10 times. And I think there's a reason for that. I think that whether you were Alex and you played in the State Open, or Andrew Novak, or the day that I showed up like over a decade ago, it just, I mean, it's like they're ready to play the US Open every single day. It should be a lot of fun to watch, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't know how much you can say about this facility until we actually get there.
Do you think this is going to be a betting situation where you look at 8 guys and you're like, hey, you have Scotty, you got Rory and Bryson after him, and then maybe 5 other guys have a chance to win this? Or do you think this is a tournament in particular where someone from that mid-tier pack can put it all together and get the right breaks throughout the week that they can win this?
I think we're going to get exactly what we got at Quail Hollow, which is on the first 2 days, everyone's going to freak out that the leaderboard is all over the place. And that's because the golf course is going to play super, super hard. So guys are going to get some breaks. Some guys are going to make over 100 feet of putts per day. And, they will jump up the leaderboard and everyone's going to be so congested. But then over the course of the first 54 holes, you're just going to see people start to fall off. And then you're going to see the big 3. You're going to see Rory, Bryson, and Scotty. And then maybe some semblance of one other guy. I mean, you said 8. I really think there's only like 3.5, 4 names that really have proven in any way, shape, or form over the last 6 months that they should even be considered to like contend against Rory and Scotty, who are definitely at a league of their own right now.
Well, let's think about who those guys might be. It wouldn't shock me to see Xander compete with these guys. I don't think that he's on their level right now, especially having come back from injury. But we've seen enough pieces of his game where the driving's been great, and then the rest of his game sucks. Where he's the best iron player in the field, and then he can't drive it that day. The putter was awful, but then the putter started to come back, and the touches come back around the green. That if he was to magically put it together over these 4 days, and he's been a tremendous U.S. Open player over the past decade, regardless of where the venue is. That wouldn't surprise me. Was he the name that you were thinking about? Because I'd throw Rahm into that mix. I'd throw Morikawa into that mix. I don't think that he's playing up to his regular self over the past month or so, but he does possess, outside of Scotty, the one skill set that it's not that I'm leaning more towards accuracy over distance, but some combination of the two, that if you are a particularly accurate player, I do think that can save you a lot of headaches.
Well, the 2 names I was thinking at for 4 were either Rahm or Xander. So we're in lockstep on that. I mean, this is going to sound harsh, but like, to quote Jack, I mean, I guess Colin's just a nice player, Pat. Right? I mean, at the end of the day, Sepp Straka's played better than him.
I've bet Sepp Straka to win this tournament at 80-1. I don't think CoolBet still has that number right now. Shout out to our friends at CoolBet. They have awesome giveaways, nice deposit bonuses. If you live in Canada outside of Ontario, hit the description. Go get your cash. Maybe win one of these free trips. Definitely worth it. And Sepp Straka is still 80-1 up there right now. But he is a player that, in a perfect world, everything goes right for him. I do think that he has the proper skill set to contend. Lowry, I think, has the proper skill set to contend too. I
mean, Shane was there. I mean, he had a 3 or 4 shot lead going into the final round, which, was a quick turn on Sunday back in 2016 because of the weather and everything. But Shane had the lead. He's one of the few players. I think there's 32 guys that played in 16 that are going to play in this edition of it. So not a lot of crossover, mostly just the big names like a Rory or a Shane or somebody like that. But I guess DJ's the defending venue champion, but I'm not sure DJ's really up to the challenge. But that kind of goes along with the whole narrative of this is that Bryson prepares like no other player on LIV for these events. And it's proven that now he's showing up in majors, and maybe the extra time that he has week to week that he's not playing in, these events all over the world, that he just breaks down the golf course like nobody else. And then he works on exactly what he needs to do in order to excel on whatever the venue or the host venue is. And, Scotty's the same way. I mean, those two manage a golf course like Tiger used to manage a golf course. Back in the day when we would see, Tiger prepare for a major championship down at Isleworth, the extensive nature with which he would do things was just unbelievable. And he would hit situational shots as almost like, instead of Butch Harmon, like Bill Belichick was his golf coach, like, do your job, right? And I'll never forget, he used to hit these rope hook 3-woods all the time on the range, and he would set up like cones out on the range where he would then hit these 3-woods. And so finally one day I had the opportunity where the timing worked out. I'm like, what are you doing? Like hitting this shot, because it makes no sense. And he was like, hey, I know you've probably never been on the tee box at 13 at Augusta, but like, you can imagine, we've measured it out. This is what it looks like. He goes, and I'm going to need this 3-wood. And, sure enough, he's used it a couple times. I mean, he used it in 2001 to beat Phil in the final round when they were in the final pairing. And then he won the Tiger Slam. So like, I think that Bryson and Scotty, their ability to course manage is so far superior over everyone else. It just kind of puts them in a league of their own. Talent wise, Rory's up there with them. It'll be interesting to see how Canada plays out, because, you gave this great soliloquy as to like the evolution of the RBC Canadian Open and how Rory kind of saved the event. And I think it's very interesting that him still going up there the week before Oakmont and after the career Grand Slam. We know Rory's won a bunch of events the week before he goes into a major, similar to Wells Fargo last year before, Valhalla. It'll be interesting to see how Rory goes, but those other two guys, the way they manage a golf course is so really interesting to me. Like, as a PGA professional and like a coach and playability and like the way they analyze a golf course. And it's exactly what Tiger used to do back in the day. They're just so situational and it's so successful.
Well, Bryson's prep, I saw him at the White House earlier this week, and that didn't look like 5.5-inch rough in the backyard of the White House.
No. Everybody loves the show. Bryson is golf's, maybe second to you, Pat, golf's greatest marketer. At the end of the day, the guy is incredible for what he's done for the game and his image and everything else. But don't fool yourself. Whether he's on billboards or at the White House or whatever he's doing, he loves to compete. He is like Scotty. Like, those guys can't turn it off, like a Michael Jordan or something, like Tiger. They just can't. If they were having a free throw contest, they would be as competitive as they could, whether they were good at it or not. He is being competitive in everything that he's doing, especially because he puts himself under such a microscope day in and day out. When Scotty goes and practices, he goes and he talks about how he separates from his personal life and he gets into golf life. And then like, he's able to concentrate and be mindful of what he's doing. But he does that quietly. Bryson is constantly under the microscope, and that level of, I guess, critical analysis 24/7, whether it's YouTube or whether it's Live or whether it's the next major championship, I think has done good things for Bryson, his performance.
I think that the lap schedule has done a ton for Bryson, but I disagree that he's under the microscope all the time. I think that social media wise, public perception wise, you're right, but he controls all of that now. Leaving the PGA Tour was the best thing that he ever did, because the more we ever saw of Bryson, the more people hated his guts.
This is true. But don't kid yourself. He is doing things, where he shows up on videos where he is constantly testing himself, whether it's break 50 with who cares, right? He puts himself under the gun to hit good shots. Those aren't multiple takes. That's him hitting those shots under the gun. And I think that it's making him more comfortable with his own game.
And he's the one that I want to bet this week. I keep coming back to it. I believe I'll ask Blickle a little bit later on. Shockingly enough, I've already recorded that portion of it. When you double up when you have guests on earlier in the week, you get their thoughts on things, especially because he had played the course before in a competitive setting. But I want a reason to bet on Brett. I'm so afraid of Scotty, but I've been afraid of Scotty at each of the past 5 U.S. Opens. And spoiler alert, he didn't win any of them.
Yeah, what's different about this version of Scotty going into the U.S. Open, where
what was different than last year's version when he had 6 wins by this point or whatever it was?
I guess the difference is that when I got to Pinehurst last year, instantly I was like, we have to fade Scotty this week because this is going to be a putting contest. Every single person is going to have to hit to the same part of every green. And this Wiregrass isn't nearly as bad as everyone says it is. So people are going to be able to miss fairways, a la Rory, a la Bryson, a la Cantley, Ludwig, Pavone, all those guys that were in contention last year, they were missing fairways and they were still all hitting to the same part of the green. And then it became a putting contest, which we knew at that time was certainly, Scotty's weakest strokes gained category. This version of Scotty, the iron game is even better. And I think there are going to be scoring opportunities at Oakmont if you can control your superpower, if you're Scotty, and you can continue to hit it pin high all the time. And he's I think top 25, top 27 in strokes gained putting on the tour, which is, astronomically better for him than it has been over a large portion of this extended run now. So for those reasons and a bunch of others, Jack's place is only 200 miles west. The agronomy, everything there. I think Jack took it on as a personal challenge at the Memorial to put out something that was like comparable to Oakmont. Now, it's not fair to compare them, but the fact of the matter is that the field looked like they did, especially over the weekend when they all backed up and Scotty continued to go forward and plod. And that may have been more helpful to Scotty than anything else. I think what's most interesting about this, 3 guys below 10-1, is that to me, immediately it's like, well, I don't want to bet any of those guys pre-tournament. That goes against all the things that we always all talk about, we all believe in. And then it's like, could this be the week where we get a grand shift towards more people paying attention to live betting, which I know you love to do and I love to do. And then we can really watch markets. And then, golf betting content can kind of like take that next level step, because that to me would be something that would be signature about this Oakmont experience. Because right now, at least until I get on property, there's not an awful lot to talk about from a betting perspective at the top of the board.
Well, I think for me, I can still grab an 11 on Bryson right now. Shout out Coolbet once again. And I can probably get that boosted up as the official PME boost if that's what I ended up going with on Monday, and get that to like 13-1 potentially. I think at 10-1, he's got to be the guy. I think he has the best chance of running down Scotty, and he's going to be quadruple the odds. I don't think that Scotty has a 4 times chance better of beating Bryson this week. Bryson, I guess it boils down to this. Yes, Scotty is by far the best player in the world. It's not even close at this point. Is he 4 times better than Bryson to win a tournament? I don't think that's probably the case. But this course in particular, and this is where I really want to get your insight to it, of all of those top guys, the guy that is going to keep the ball likely enough in the short grass the most often is going to be Scheffler. Obviously, he doesn't have the power of Rory or Bryson, but he has plus distance and plus accuracy, which is not something you can say for most of the world's top players. They just have go distance and they're kind of accurate, more so when they want to be. But Blickle again brought this up and I watched it when I watched Dustin win. Dustin didn't have very many misses that were slightly off the fairway. Now, he drove the ball incredibly all week. He probably should have won that tournament by 20 strokes, how well he played compared to everyone else tee to green. But when he missed big. And when you miss big, it wasn't as bad.
Well, true, because the footprint there, every hole is on top of one another. Other than the 7 that you go across the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and then, you play those. But even those are next to one another. So as you start to put hundreds of thousands of people through the turnstiles there and they're walking around, yes, they can rope off areas that are 15 to 20 yards off the edge of the fairway. But then past that, if you're a Bryson or a Rory and you hit it off the planet, but you hit it 340, then certainly, you're going to be out in some trampled areas and you could get some luck. What's interesting to me about this particular venue, and probably the thing I'm going to pay attention to the most, is that you look at the leaderboards and it's certainly the longest guys of each kind of era, we'll call it, right? Without to go too Taylor Swift on you, but of every era, right? 94, 07, 16 or whatever, you had Cabrera, you had DJ, you had Els. These are the long guys. These are the guys that end up winning, right? But these top 10s are like scattered with guys like David Toms. And
but this is why the accuracy thing, it keeps coming back to me. Like, why can't Aaron Rye come 6th here?
Oh, he could. He very well, he couldn't because he's not a good enough putter. I think you really need to be a very good putter here. I think the greens.
Berger, Corey Connors. Connors can't putt either. But
yeah, that's 3 guys that really can't putt.
I don't know. Yes, putting is obviously going to be important because you're going to have knee-knocking 7-footers the entire week. But so much of the U.S. Open, historically, especially at Oakmont, is hit the ball to 30 feet and 2-putt, be on your way. And the guys that can do that the most often are going to be the guys that are there in the end. And the path of least resistance to do that is hit it down the middle of the fairway, hit your mid iron, your 6-iron to 30, 35 feet, and just don't blow putts by.
Yeah, I mean, could Jacob Bridgman be our first round leader? He played there in the 21 amateur, made match play, won a couple of matches. Guys, top 10 on the PGA Tour, probably top 5 in this field for strokes gained putting. Could he be the guy? Sure. And there's going to be guys like that. But overall, I still think at the length that this golf course is and the length of the rough, I look at Torrey, I look at Wingfoot, I look at last year. The U.S. Open, the U.S. Open, the U.S. Open. Strike that. The U.S. Open has just become such a bomber's paradise. It's very interesting. I mean, these guys contend. Don't get me wrong. We are going to see the Jim Furyk's of the world, but at the end of the day, I think if we're having a conversation about who's going to win, it's going to be somebody who has some high level of ball speed, and I will put Scotty in that category because he drives it around 300 yards. It's going to be somebody who has some high level of ball speed because the rough, and it looks like the early forecast is that it's been wet there. It's going to be wet there the weekend before. It's going to be wet on Monday and Tuesday. I'll get there first thing Monday morning. It's going to be wet Monday and Tuesday. So it'll be interesting to see how much they can dry out. Now, the green surfaces will be perfect. They will be absolutely perfect. They will roll faster than anyone has ever experienced playing in their competitive life, unless they've played there before, like Alex or somebody else, or they were there in 16. So that won't be as much of an issue, but I don't know, man. It's tough for me to get away from the speed thing.
Well, so does that mean like Minwoo, the Højgaards, like these need to be targets for you, if not necessarily to bet outright, but one of those 3 guys ends up becoming super competitive because of the ball speed?
Absolutely. 100%. I think at the end of the day, when you look at the top 20, there's going to be 10 guys with ball speed, and there's going to be 10 of your practitioners that you're talking about, 10 of your chess players. And
so let's try to focus on those guys to see if we can suss them out. Because the name I keep coming back to, a guy that does well at U.S. Opens, has played well at long courses, even with thicker rough. You brought up Torrey. Obviously, it's not going to be the same sort of situation. Although it's funny that I brought up earlier that if you can have the big miss, maybe it's not as big of a deal. And that's kind of why I like Bryson, especially the big left miss seems to be so much better than the big right miss at this place. But Harris English shows up at these types of venues.
Yeah, I don't think Harris English misses it a lot either. Great putter. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone should pay attention to Harris English. I think Harris English has Beth Page on his mind too. A lot of these guys are very focused on something that, they need a carrot because, a guy like Harris English, he's been around over a decade. He's just kind of like cruising along. And when he's playing average, it's like, okay, so why do I need today to I have my card for next year. Like, why do I need to go out today and grind? And it looks like, Harris has obviously been grinding. He won at Torrey. That's a great comp for this as far as what the rough, what the landing areas, what the situation is going to be like. People are going to get thrown off by the fact that these greens, they're going to read the golf course superintendent report, and it's going to say, oh, the greens are 8,000 square feet. Yeah, but these things, like the edges melt off like a Dali clock painting, they added 24,000 square feet, Gil did, when he did the most recent renovation, so they could have a couple more cup placements. That's going to make the greens harder, the fact that they're bigger, because now they're going to be more sectional at a place like this that is so classically designed. So, at the end of the day, I feel like, don't get thrown off by things like that. I think that Harris is a nice blend of power and control. And the fact that he is completely driven right now, as I know from his camp, that he wants to be at Bethpage and he thinks he should be, and he's playing at that level and he's driven like that. I think he's a great pull from further down the board. And I think that all the data darlings that love your Rise and your Henleys and those guys are going to show up too. I mean, they're going to be a part of that group. And I would even put like Sepp in that group. Sepp's not necessarily a power player. He puts the ball in play all the time. Fairway Jesus is another one. Shane Lowry's another one. Shane's like second on tour in tee to green, strokes gained tee to green. He keeps the ball in play. Those guys, those are the 10 guys I'm talking about that are like your chess players versus your checkers guys who are like just blasted to the end of the board and king me like Bryson.
So I have the ball speeds pulled up right here. Bryson's number 1. I don't know if Marco Pange from England actually got into this field, but he would be number 2. Minwoo, Norgard, Højgaard. Don't believe Burmeister's in. I don't think he qualified. Neiman is up there. Then Rahm and Rory, Woodland, Wyndham, Higo, Jake Knapp, Cam Young, Xander, Ryan Fox. Is Thorbjornsen in? I don't believe he is.
No,
He didn't
Thorbjornsen's
qualify,
not.
did he?
No, he did. I know that off the top of my head because I was looking at the guys that played in the 21 AM, which he did, and he did fairly well at, and he did not qualify.
Yeah, I had the list pulled up. That's a part of this intro. It's like Bridgman and Highsmith, which is hilarious because I just always get them confused as the same person, that they might actually be the same person now.
You should try betting the LPGA. You're getting confused. It's pretty
Well,
easy.
at least they have like the number 6 next to their name, so you can distinguish them from number 3.
They don't when they're walking down the range, Pat. You know,
They don't wear it on on their hat or something, a big 6.
I could use it. Trust me, I can tell you. You know, the
But,
standard
like,
bearer.
but
The
those would
standard
be-
bearer is very valuable on the LPGA tour. I'll
But,
just.
but those would be like the big ones. Like Brooks is still up there, Ludwig, Pendrith, and I'm starting to think not so much from an outright winner perspective. I'm starting to think of a daily fantasy perspective. Like who can we
Yep.
populate the rest of our teams with? And I would guess that the default position would be the guys that I just rattled off who aren't Rory, like obviously the big guys. But then when you go to the next level, the Minwoos, the Dane, basically, what's with ball speed training in Denmark? Is this like a thing that they do from age 4 that they all just hit the ball a mile now?
I don't know. I mean, when you were reading that list off, I was thinking to myself, man, if I was the Hogard's next door neighbor, like growing up, I wouldn't want to be there, right? You know, or I guess they were practicing in the garage or something, speed training. God only knows. But that must have been an active backyard when they were kids. I don't. God knows what they were doing.
So then you start to think about the chess players. We rattled off a bunch of them, like Tommy, Shane, a lot of the Euros, frankly, like even someone like Justin Rose. I don't know if he has the wherewithal to hit as many fairways as he used to be able to. But again, as a first round leader type guy, obviously we know he can putt.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out where, like when I started to see some of the names that were up there, especially early on last time. And as you made mention, there was a ton of weather. Like Dustin didn't end up teeing off in his first round until Friday. And then he played, I think it was 32 holes on Friday before he came back and finished on Saturday morning. But when you looked at the top of that leaderboard, it was feisty Euros and guys that dominate at Riviera.
Ooh, feisty Euros and guys that
Like
dominated
like the
Riviera.
first 2-day leaderboard. I mean, Andrew Landry aside, because he
Yeah.
made every single putt possible. It was Bubba, Sergio, and Dustin, all guys with tremendous track records at Riviera. Then you had Westwood was up there. I
Yep.
think it was G-Mac who hung on for a little bit. That other style of play, basically, Shane Lowry was the other guy. The Shane Lowry style of, which is Shane
Brendan
Lowry
Grace
is
was
just
up there. Right.
weirdly enough, Shane Lowry has now become kind of the worst version of Seb Straka. The way that he's going to put it in play,
Yeah.
and he's going to hit his irons really well. Except Straka can actually make a putt or two from time to time.
Yeah, Shane. I went with Shane at Memorial, and like, man, it's like all weekend backup noise when the delivery truck comes to your house. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was so bad, and the putter, it was awful.
But weirdly, when you take a look at it, the guys that, although the Truist didn't end up playing as potentially as difficult as it would have later on in the year if stuff had firmed out, and obviously it was very wet at the cricket club, and you were there, and we talked about it that week, I believe, or the week after when you were there. But a lot of the guys that did well at the cricket club, I could see doing well here too.
So you'd want to jump on JT as one of these mid-level guys.
But he's not even, the thing is, he's not going to be priced as a mid-level guy. He's going to be priced as a favorite, which then I have less interest.
So that, like, when we have two different discussions, when we get to the DFS, like Wiley and I do this all the time on Tuesdays. We talk about, optimal lineups, and it's just amazing to me how the value of a guy like a really good player with high upside in the 7K range versus a guy in the 9Ks that has to earn it just hasn't panned out all year. Like there were averaging like 3.5 players at 7K and below. And yes, Scotty goes optimal most weeks nowadays, but he wasn't when he first came back from the ravioli injury. And it's just interesting to me that, like, when I look at this field, there's going to be a ton of what we're calling chess players down in that 7K and 6K range, and maybe even down in the 5s. I assume that Scotty's going to be the highest number that he's ever been because they can't outprice him. So they're going to have to include 5Ks. And then, I just don't see anyone that strikes fear into anyone up there that's going to be the 9K, because like Fleetwood, Lowry, Morikawa, Cantley, Hovland. They're all going to be like your 9K and high 8K guys. And then we're going to have down there in the 7K land, your Novaks and your Sepp Strakas and those guys. It's just, I don't know.
I don't
interesting.
think you should ever look and think about things from an optimal setting, because no one's ever going to actually get the optimal. People are going to be 75 points off the there's just going to be players who fit in there that there would be no basis to actually take them.
No,
And
it's more of a value type of
but I
perspective.
understand that, but if you can mine similar value from someone who like we'll see how he plays in Canada, and I think that he's in the field next week. Maybe he's not. Maybe he didn't end up qualifying. But an Alex Smalley level player, where we've seen him show up. He showed up at the Players, and like he'll randomly show up at some of these bigger events, and he has that accuracy yet overall tee to green skill set. Not necessarily the distance, but you're talking about the value type of player. He's sort of like the lesser version of Berger right now, who, depending on who you talk to, Berger is either the most underrated or overrated player on tour.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and Smalley's not in the field. He didn't qualify, but yeah, sorry. But I mean, I guess it comes back to like the devil you know or the devil you don't know. I mean, how is this golf course going to play? Right. The number one thing you're going to be able to do is you need to be able to break it down from a course management point of view, because you've got holes like 2 and 4 and 9 and 12 and 15 where they have these like random cross bunkers all over the place. I mean, there's 170 something bunkers on this golf course, right? There's no water hazards. So why do people shoot over par? Right. Well, there's very difficult rough. There's no trees, and then there's bunkers everywhere, and the greens are. You could argue that they're too crazy or they're not crazy enough. I mean, I don't know. I mean, walking away from that experience that day was kind of like, you know, just really, you really just kind of like shake your head and you go like, what just happened to me, right? Like, you're just so challenged on every single play, and that's what it's going to come down to. It's like, who has the best strokes gained like mentality to just keep it all together and be patient, right? Like, I feel like a guy like a Russell Henley acts like that from time to time. I feel like a guy like a Patrick Cantley acts like that from time to time. Certainly the guys at the top, those are all givens, right? But like,
well, let's try to brainstorm some more names. I like this path that we're going down. I would throw Corey Connors into that mix.
yeah, that's a great one. That's a really good one. Yes.
Because I think statistically, the anti-profile that we've described, high accuracy, great irons, great short game, maybe can do something with the putter. Siwoo is the ultimate answer to this, but as you kind of point out, not necessarily a chess player, Siwoo.
Yeah, well, yeah. Siwoo doesn't have the patience factor, but certainly the way he hits fairways, I mean, the guy's a stripe show. I mean, he lines the highway. And he has an incredible short game. The putter is what it is. People are going to have their moments with the putter here, whether they're a good putter or not. We're going to see a lot of, 4 putts and all sorts of highlights or lowlights, whatever you want to consider them, or the social media is going to be filled with like guys missing 2-foot putts and stuff. It's just, that's a factor of what happens when you play here. The greens are so severe and they are so fast. It is literally like dropping a golf ball on a sloped driveway, right? Like, how do you make the ball stop? And I mean, the fringe will do it, but that's about it. So I like the Connors Furyk, that level of player, I think, is really where you're going to make your meat and potatoes lineups, or you're going to make your money in your placements, your matchups, all of your live betting, any of the props that you want to play. I think that's really your opportunity. And then with the big three, you just kind of monitor the live market. I mean, there was a point over the weekend at Memorial where, before Scotty went on that run Saturday afternoon, where, he had some decent value on the outright board, more than double of where he was to start the week. And you had like 27 holes left to play. So, I mean, those are the things that you really have to pay attention to. And when you see live content, covering the golf betting that week, I mean, that's really what I'd pay attention to. But I love the Connors kind of archetype player.
I'm just trying to think of what other players fit into that mold. Tommy kind of does.
Yeah, Tommy for sure. Tommy would be one.
Because I was thinking Bobby Mack as well, because he's not as accurate as maybe some of those guys, but generally speaking, he is. His iron play, I think, is very underrated right now. Great around the greens, and I worry about but it comes back to I worry about his lack of distance. But even if it's a little bit wetter on Thursday, it looks like it's going to dry out over the weekend. I feel like he plays really well in super dry conditions. It's weird, like being from Scotland, but when you start playing link style courses, it's not like those courses get baked out. They just are how they are. Even if when they're wet, they're exactly the same. That his ball flight, his style of play, if he can keep it in the fairway, his lack of distance, I don't think is going to be that big of a deal because his ball will roll out more than most.
Yeah, I mean, you would know this because up where you live now, up there on the east coast of Canada, I mean, you get a lot of links-like type conditions, and that's what they play in Scotland. So even if it does rain a lot, the loamy nature of the soil, everything just kind of like the water just kind of permeates through it really quick, and then it dries out because it tends to be windy in those places too. I don't see a lot of wind coming next week. I really hope that we can get some somewhat firm conditions. It rained the whole time during 16 and there was like 3 or 4 guys left under par. The rest of the time, the other 2 championships, the guys were over par. I think, people will just be disappointed if it's too soft because they won't get to see all of the carnage that they want to see, especially starting with the people that are watching that are members of Oakmont to begin with. But again, going back to the playability of this golf course, I like once you get outside the big 3 and you have to, if you want to pick one of those to win, by all means go do that. I think you're really looking for that Corey Connors type of player, the type of guy that is an average putter, but tee to green, he is just so solid. And you look at those leaderboards as you go back through time, that's your Shane Lowry. That's the same type of player. That's the Tommy. That is probably like your Tyrrell Hatton. It's like half the European Ryder Cup team, which is why they're going to kill us at Bethpage. But that's neither here nor there. You could get Keegan in that model, right?
Is Keegan patient enough to be, because I was looking at his tee to green. The tee to green is just absolutely stunning over the past 3 months, and he makes perfect sense. He's someone that I did want to target, but do you think that he possesses that patience not to get too aggressive? Because it does feel like the moment you get too aggressive here, double bogey, triple bogeys are in play.
Oh yeah, you're gonna take the shaft hard if you go after this place too aggressively. I think that Keegan at his age now and with all the responsibility he has as Ryder Cup captain is a different Keegan than he was 5 years ago. I think that Keegan is a fine play. I think through the middle of the board, I think Keegan's a fine play.
Let's try to figure this out. So should I bet Bryson, I guess is my question. I just really want to, so I probably will regardless, but the path for him is there to beat Scotty, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
what's the path to Scotty not winning? Is it he shows up with his B- game, comes in 4th, and someone else brings their A game that week? Because don't be surprised, because you mentioned it. You're going to see a lot of guys miss 2-footers. Even though Scheffler's putting is much better than it was a year ago, still not afraid to miss a few 2-footers.
Yeah, I would say there's 2 things that worry me about Scheffler. And, everyone's calling him Mr. Inevitable right now and everything, but like that has a lot to do with the fact that he's in people's heads, or guys like Xander are just struggling with certain parts of their game that they weren't struggling with last year. I think that there's 2 things that would bother me about Scheffler. Number one, if he starts getting that left miss again with the driver, and then he constantly has to save par, the weakest part of his main strokes gained characteristics this year has been the short game. Now, don't get me wrong. It's still very, very good, but the putting is kind of taken over as the 3rd best thing. So it's his approach game that is off the tee. I mean, he's number 1 and off the tee. I'm saying he could have a problem, but if he gets the long left miss because he's chasing a little length when if he gets paired with Bryson or something like on Saturday, that could be an issue. And then the short game could be an issue. I don't foresee, I think he and Kenyon they're in a pretty good place right now, and he's confident with his putting. And obviously the iron game is like otherworldly. It's like Tiger back in the day, like what I used to watch on the range. It's just like an absolute, it's just a pleasure to behold. It's just like one of my favorite things to watch is when Scheffler's just hitting shot after shot with Randy at a major, and you're just standing on the range and you're like, man, look how good that is. It's so tight. It's so precise. It's pin high every time, right? Like that's the one thing, like when you want to determine if someone's a really good ball striker, they hit it pin high every time. Not everyone can hit it dead straight, right? Because the ball curves. It's a curved face, a curved swing, and a curved ball, right? But like they hit it pin high, which means they compress the ball the same way every single time. And Scheffler is so good at that. Tiger was so good at that. The greatest players, the greatest ball strikers, Nick Price, those types of guys, Faldo, all of them, they all hit it pin high. And, I would say it's the driver. If the driver gets a little loose, long and left, and then if the short game is where it has been this year, then there's definitely a chance for a Rory Bryson or somebody like a Rahm to slide in there for sure. Because this golf course, we haven't talked about him a lot, but this golf course is going to fit John Rahm very, very well. And he's shown that he's still probably the top 4 player in the world. And, I mean, I think about last year at Troon when he made it through the bad wave and he finished top 10 in that tournament. I mean, that guy played exceptionally good. And then we were all our brains were kind of rotted by the fact that he gave up like a 12-stroke lead with 8 holes to go at the Olympics. But he came back this year at the PGA and he had some fire back in him. Maybe Rahm's ready to get going again, and he is your prototype U.S. Open player. Puts the ball in play with a lot of power, and can score,
and can chip and putt.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
and played here as an amateur in 2016 and came T23. Scheffler, despite being inside the top 5 after the first round, ended up missing the cut at that U.S. Open as an amateur himself.
Yeah, Rory missed the cut too.
Guys are going to miss the cut. Not a bad week to build a to miss the cut parlay with names you are assured in thinking are going to make the cut.
Yeah,
JT, Xander,
Spieth,
Hideki. There you go. Put those 4 together and play a to miss the cut parlay.
It'd probably still be a negative number. Like we couldn't even get a positive number on those 4 to miss the cut.
Honest to God, if you put those 4 players together in a to miss the cut parlay, and the cut line being top 60, not top 65 in ties, and having the full field under these conditions, I think it's worth playing a round robin or 2 with those sorts of things. But if you put those 4 together, I would estimate that it would be around like 50 to 1.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, especially because you did drop Xander in there, right?
Yeah, but it's not that I think that Xander is going to miss the cut, but he leaves one of his skills absent so often over the course of the past 3 months that will amplify this week if that ends up being the case. Like he's not going to grind out a 1 under if he doesn't have the driver going. He's going to be like 76, 77.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't get the driver going here, par 70 and 7,400 yards, oh man.
Hey,
I mean, some of these guys are going to need
Canada this week is a par 70, 7,400 yards.
It's actually 17 yards longer on the official scorecard than Oakmont is, right?
Yeah, don't think it's going to play quite as tough.
No. But, man, they have some, Canada, this TPC Toronto, Osprey Valley, yada, yada, whatever, North Course. I mean, they've got some serious par 4s there. I know they're probably converted par 5s for the public, but man, like the average par 4 length there was 459 yards. And that's the same as it was at Quail Hollow. And that's a serious grown man's golf course.
Yeah, 6 of them over 480 at TPC Toronto.
That's insane. Of course, for somebody like Taylor Pendrith, it's like driver 7-iron, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, this show is coming out after the Canadian Open actually starts on Thursday, but I can't remember a time when I don't know anyone who hasn't bet Taylor Pendrith this week, myself included. I bet him too.
I did not. I might put him in the Oakmont missed cut parlay just for fun because I just feel like the guy. I think it was you I was talking to. Isn't he? He's from right near there, right? Or maybe it was Wiley because he's Canadian too.
Pendrith is from close. Like he's played TPC Toronto probably more times than the rest of the field combined.
Yeah, but he's from like Richmond Hill or something like that, which is on the east side of Toronto, and this place is like way west of Toronto. Am I right there?
This isn't close to Toronto. It's like an hour and a half outside the city.
Yeah. Okay. So whatever. Like it's out wherever it is, right? Like Pendrith is the closest one. Like Mac was last year at Hamilton, right? He was like the local boy, right? So Pendrith is the local boy this week. I just feel like that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure on that guy. I think back to that.
Weirdly enough, I think with the Canadians, Nick Taylor currently soaks up. So like Connors is like the player in Canada right now because he's been good, like not so good, but very good for so long at this point that he's been so consistent. He's been top of mind despite only having 2 wins. And Taylor gets all the cred because I think he has 5 wins on tour and he won the Canadian Open. By and large, most of these Canadian golfers are not that well known that, at the course, I think that Pendrith will have a lot of support, but it's not like the Canadian public if he gets up there, people will absolutely go mental for it. If it's like him and Rory in the final group, people will love that if he can do it. And I think that he has the right skill set for that course. But I don't think that there's an overload of pressure on him because there is no one really local to this course.
Well,
Like
I would just
Ben Silverman's actually from Richmond Hill. Maybe that's who you were thinking of. Jeff Feinberg's neighbor.
Oh wow. Is
Not
he really?
but
Oh,
Richmond Close is very close to where Feinberg lives.
well, don't let the truth get in the way of a good Feinberg story, you know.
Yeah, listen, he was the man of the people at the Jays game the other night. People sent me like multiple pictures of him just interacting with the public.
Well, that's what people want up there, you know. He's a man of the people, and you know, I should get him an extra read the line workstation, have him come down next week to Oakmont and let him be a man of the people there, you know.
That would be incredible.
I think Pennsylvania is going to show up big time. You know, it's been a while since Pittsburgh has had this level of golf tournament, right? Obviously, the 16 version of this would have been the last time, and you know, we have some really, really good players that are in position. Four of those guys at the top, I'll include Rahm, are playing some quite good golf, and I think they can all push one another. There's a good chance that over the weekend you get some sort of Scotty Rory, Scotty Bryson, Rory Bryson type pairing. So I want to, like, there's two themes to this interview. Number one, like, I got to get on property, right? Like that's my favorite thing to do as a PGA professional, is that I really want to look at what the golf course is playing like and what these guys are doing when they're out on the golf courses, especially around the greens. How challenging is it going to be around the greens? Because sometimes just because the rough is tall and everything doesn't necessarily mean, you know, that around the green play is going to be that much of a factor. So, but these greens are crazy. I just want to see all that play out. And then, you know, you want to see how comfortable guys are. Body language will tell you a lot, man. You know, like every time I see Max Homa on the range, he looks like he's just looking for a hole to go crawl in. And when I see Scotty, he's walking around like his pants are unzipped. So it's like, it's these two different, like those are the guys we're looking for, whether they're at 7K or they're at 13K or 14K, whatever Scotty's going to be.
So last two things, pick to win and winning score. I'm going to pick Bryson to win at -1.
Ooh, I'm going to go. I'll go Scotty, and I will say that two of the big three will finish under par, and it's probably going to be our two boys. And I'm going to go Scotty at 4 under.
How many guys do you think finish under par? Because as Novak pointed out in the interview that preceded this one, he would take even right now, and he thinks that would win.
I think that less than 5 will finish under par. And the only reason I'm saying that is that because it's going to be wet. Not like wet like 16, but it's going to be wet. I think that I think there's a bit of hyperbole that comes out through social media that it's like, oh my God. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's going to be like a lot of carnage. The cut will probably be like 6 over, but it's top 60 in ties. Like these are 156, like really, really good golfers that can manage themselves for 2 days. Like the cut will probably be like +5, +6. And then I think you'll probably have 2 to 4 guys that finish under par, at which I think Scotty at 3 or 4 under par wins.
Keith Stewart from readtheline.com, KJ Stewart on X. You're saying you're getting there on Monday morning?
I'll be there Monday morning. You know, certainly I want to say, you know, tune in, watch Wiley and I on the Golf Pro Betting Show on Tuesday afternoon at 3:00.
Hold on. The Golf Pro Betting Show. He's not considering himself a golf pro now, is he?
No, he's not.
Okay.
No.
That's just you.
Not whatsoever. No. In fact, the name actually makes him very uncomfortable, which is fun for me, you know. So it's the perfect rapport between he and I, because he loves hyperbole and I love actual facts. So we go back and forth, and and you know this, Pat, because you know him better than I know him, but like he's a really good DFS player, right? Like you have Tambo on your team. Like these guys are like exceptionally good DFS players. And, you know, my specialty is getting on site and figuring the place out, which I will do on Monday and Tuesday, and then we'll talk about it. So I would say, you know, these previews are awesome, and I love to get some of this stuff out that I get with you. But at the same time, when we're boots on the ground, it does help as well. And we're going to need all the help we get against these big three at single digits.
So keep up to date with what Keith is up to at the course. Again, you can follow him there and check out readtheline.com for those updates. Coming up now, Alex Blickle from FTN.com to share his experience about the course from him playing in the 2015 Pennsylvania Open. If you missed the chat with him on Wednesday, he tried to qualify for the U.S. Open, made it to the Maryland qualifier, and he talks through his experience on that. But now we're talking some Oakmont. The Travelers Championship, the Northeast one and only PGA Tour signature event. Can it surpass the excitement of last year's thrilling finale when Scottie Scheffler broke away from the loaded leaderboard with 3 straight birdies in the back 9 during the final round, leading to a dramatic one-hole playoff with Ton Kim winning him his 6th PGA Tour victory of the year? Will Scottie repeat as champion? Come watch as the world's best PGA Tour players try to dethrone him. All of them competing all 4 days at TPC River Highlands. The action begins June 19th and runs through June 22nd. For tickets and information, visit TravelersChampionship.com to see the greats, including Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Xander Schauffele, Ludwig Oberg, and the rest. The Travelers Championship. There is only one. Alex Blickle is here again. I can't believe you were able to come on twice. But to talk about Oakmont, a course which you have played in a competitive setting, we joked on the Wednesday DraftKings show for the Canadian Open that even is probably the winning score. And I guess the only caveat to that would be if there's a bunch of rain on Wednesday night and the course gets softened up.
Honestly, though, I don't think that would make it that much easier because it would just mean that it's playing even longer and it would just make the rough even thicker and harder to deal with. So it's just going to be a nightmare for guys no matter what.
So where are you looking at skill set wise, do you think? Because I think US Open, I'm just like, Bryson's a pretty good lock to come inside the top 5, if nothing else. But with the way that you've now talked about it playing, that having plus accuracy with distance might be like the ultimate cheat code for here. That is there, like we talked about the Canadian Open course, that maybe it was just specifically designed for Rory McIlroy. This Oakmont just sounds like Scheffler is going to beat the pants off everybody.
The two of them and Bryson, I think you talked a lot like for the Masters and the PGA Championship that those 3 are just so much further ahead of everybody. At the US Open, they're going to be even that much further ahead of everybody because of the way they drive the ball. And yeah, it's the combination of distance and accuracy, I think, just has to be far and away like the most predictive thing, because if you're not driving the ball long and accurate, it's not like you're just at a disadvantage. You have no chance on some of these holes. It's a monstrous golf course. I had a really difficult time holding fairways there where Pat, like I thought I was hitting some really good drives and they still found the rough. And so I think another like very underrated part or one underrated skill set will be the ability to shape the ball in both directions. And there, I think Rory and Scottie separate from Bryson because Bryson can pretty much only hit the draw off the tee. But you're going to have to work the ball into the slopes on the fairways. Otherwise, they're just going to bound through into the deadly rough.
So you say that, but DJ didn't really do much of that when he won in 2016. He just either hit it straight or he hit his fade. He really, every time he tried to hit a draw, he hooked it into the gallery.
Yeah, he also hit a very spinny ball at times, which can help. So that I think we have very much seen like a move away from spinny shots. Tiger actually, like he used to do this really well where he would purposely add spin to help hold fairways. And he talks even today, like I know a lot of people really love watching YouTube golf. Like he gave Grant Horvat a driving lesson, and he talked about how, yeah, he loves to hit a descending blow with the driver because it adds spin and helps a lot of drives hold their line and then hold the fairway once they land. But we don't see a lot of players doing that sort of thing anymore. They're optimizing carry distance, which you want a high launch and low spin rate for. So we don't see it as often anymore, but we know the guys who really can play all the different shot shapes. And of course, Scottie is in a tier of his own in that regard, but we also see Rory work the ball both ways off the tee with success.
Do you think that someone like Corey Connors has outs here because of how accurate he can be, his long iron play? And there's enough holes where it feels like you actually just don't have to hit driver off the tee if you don't want to, which I do think, not that he's going to club down a ton, but he can just simply hit his driver where the other guys have to club down to 5 wood.
Yeah, it's also going to be very dependent on the firmness of the fairways, because if the fairways are firm, it gets back to that idea we we talked about that last show, where sometimes distance comes from hitting fairways and getting the 30 to 40 yard rollout. And at Oakmont, it might be a 50 to 60 yard rollout. So Connors definitely has an out that way. But I think more so Connors than like a Russell Henley, for example, because Connors isn't losing strokes with his distance. He's just not gaining. Henley is losing strokes with his distance. Boy, it's going to be tough for him. When he misses fairways, he's going to be hoping to get there in 3 on par 4s, not just 2.
What do you think that the rough will do? Because we saw this at Memorial, where Akshay's hacking out. I talked to Andrew Novak about it. That's going to be on the show tomorrow, about him hacking out from the rough. He's like, I just couldn't even get the club on the ball. And then you see Scotty, he just steps up and like, oh, he can air it out of there with a 5-iron somehow. Everyone else is literally chunking it out to get it back on the fairway, and Scotty's still taking dead aim. Is there a class of players, and how do we identify them, that a 5.5-inch rough will somehow affect them less?
It's a lot of it is the precision of contact. Like when Scotty's playing it well out of the rough, he's hitting it probably a groove lower than he usually does, but he's minimizing the time the club actually spends in the rough. I struggled with this at Woodmont yesterday. I kept hitting the ball off the top of the club face, and it would just come out so dead. Scotty's so incredibly precise with his contact. That's what you have to look for. And the best thing that the best way to like just proxy that is who's really good with their irons, because you can't be an outstanding iron player without making consistent contact.
So let me give you a list, because everyone's going to sort by driving distance. So here you go. Here's some good plays for the U.S. Open for you. Rory, Bryson, maybe Minwoo, we'll see. Rahm, Xander, maybe Rasmus Højgaard, Ludwig, Scotty, maybe Wyndham Clark, maybe Jake Knapp, Neiman, Pendrith, Brooks. These guys should all be like pretty decent plays by and large. Not that all of them are going to make the cut. Now let me sort this a different way. Let me ask you, because we saw a bunch of accuracy guys, as you mentioned, because that ball was going to roll out a little bit more. Aaron Rai, Sung Jae, Morikawa, Connors, Glover, Berger, Vic Perez, Henley, Straka, Poston, Siwoo. And then shockingly, Scheffler is 12th in accuracy of all the players who are in this field. But I bet Straka at 80-1. And I think he's going to be bet down to like 40 by the time it comes down. He's shown to be a guy who plays well at similar courses to Scotty.
Straka's round 3 at the Memorial was one of the most impressive rounds of the entire season, I think, from anybody. That was a phenomenal performance. Just a total ball striking clinic. I think it was like every fairway, every green, at least on the like high leverage holes. He was just outstanding that day. So I really like the Straka call. I think all of those guys have a really good chance. I almost want to say at Oakmont, I think accuracy might be even more important off the tee than distance, because the rough is going to be so penalizing. And then you might even get like an emphasis on wedge play, because so many guys are going to be chipping out from the rough that a big deal is going to be not just like who can save par from the fairway when you have to chip out, but who can make sure that bogey is the worst score that you can make on the hole, because we are going to see doubles and triples on that golf course.
Do you think around the green means anything here with this sort of rough, or do you just put club on ball and hope it rolls close?
It's definitely going to matter. And I think one of the ways in which it's going to matter is a lot of time when guys are chipping out, they're not going to be chipping out like just to 100 yards, but they're going to be saying, all right, I'm going to put this 40 yards from the green up front. And therefore you're going to get a lot of tight lie chip shots instead of just you're buried in the rough. And guys will also, by the way, they will purposely aim for bunkers, because the bunker is so much easier than the crazy rough that we'll see. So bunker play and, the ability to hit good short game shots out of tight lies will both matter.
So this is what we found when we did the simulator walkthrough with it, when I played with my friend who's a pro, and he was trying to figure like he walked through. It's almost like you and I did for the Open Championship that year when he was talking about the different shots. Obviously, we can't mimic the rough on a simulator of how that's going to play. But he's like, if I'm here and I know that I can't get it here, I'm actually going to aim at that left side of the green, knowing that maybe it holds the green. That would be great. Or it just rolls off into these bunkers in the back. And I have a clean lie in the bunker, hopefully. Probably, and a ton of green to work with coming back. That's simply just an easier shot than getting caught up in the collar and it just flailing into the rough.
Yeah, agree completely. And every single tour player, like that's even more true for, because they are so good out of the bunkers. They just want to be able to control the spin, and they know they'll be able to do that out of the bunker, and they know they'll have no chance to do that out of the rough.
So Connors rates out really well on all the things you just talked about, except for maybe bunker player, but He's actually quite good from like 75 to 125. Less good from 30 yards, as we found out over the years. Morikawa is kind of the same as well. So I'm just trying to think if I want to build a different way and start thinking about this a different way, not necessarily with bets, because that becomes very difficult with Scotty at the top. Like I'll bet on the bet is in on Straka. I thought it was a good number. I think that he can win. Obviously, all the win equity is going to be at the top. So there are very few guys that you really want to take that many stabs at in the betting market, especially from the non-elite players, which we see win US Opens. But either top 10s, top 20s, DraftKings wise, especially building a little bit differently. What about someone like Siwoo here?
I like it. I like Siwoo a lot. I think he's got all the skill sets. The one thing I worry about with Siwoo, though, is course management, not necessarily his forte, and I think you're going to need that here.
So what about, let's see. I mean, Aaron Rai is the most accurate player on tour, deadly with his wedge. Do you think putting gets somewhat mitigated here? Like a good putter, someone who putts well during the week is going to end up there, who just has no business. Andrew Landry was the king of this last time through, that he just made everything. Therefore, he was there towards the end before his putter finally went cold. And I think he shot 7 over in the final round. But it feels like US Opens do mitigate putting a little bit just because everyone, no one's sticking it really. It's not like it becomes a who can make the most 12 footers. It's who can putt the best from 48 feet.
The flip side of that is you're going to get a lot of testers for par, and everyone's going to get those. And those can be from predictive distances. So I don't think putting's negated, but it's certainly not going to be a putting contest. Ball striking will separate players more than putting.
Is there a place that we can look at, or potentially different types of greens that will be more I assume they're going to run very firm and exceptionally fast. Would that be right to say?
Yes, they will be probably like 14 to 15 on the stimp, and they're going to be as fast as Mother Nature will let them.
So Memorial, Augusta, where else do you think we could look at potential comp putting in terms of speed?
I mean, I think Memorial is like just such a great comp everywhere, not just on putting, but the whole course setup, the how difficult it is to play out of the rough, and how a lot of the time when you're in rough, you're chipping out. Outside of that, I think I wish that the Truist had been played in firmer, faster conditions, because that would have been a great, great comp. I still think it's going to be a pretty good comp. I think I mentioned this to you on the Truist show, but when we played the State Open at Oakmont the year before, we played it at Philly Cricket, and the difference in the cut line was 1 stroke, and it was the exact same winning score at even par. So I think you can draw a comparison there as well.
So taking a look at Scotty played here as an amateur in 2016. He was actually 1 under after the first round and then bombed out to make the cut. But I started looking at some of the names that were up there earlier on, and it was a lot of guys who played really well at Riviera over the years. Why is that a thing? Or is it just weird happenstance?
No, I like that too, because you get the rough, you get the distance. Like it can be a much longer course than even what it says on the scorecard. But then you get really firm, fast greens there as well. I mean, think of like over the last few years, I think if you pointed to 2 golf courses that consistently played really difficult and with really firm greens that players even had trouble holding, you think of like the 4th hole, the long par 3 at Riviera. You think of Bay Hill. So I think that's another one potentially. But man, I think you're onto something for sure with Riviera.
So we'll put Muirfield Village, we'll put Riviera, and we'll put Bay Hill. And I guess we'll throw in Augusta to it. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've mentioned this before, but like I think one of the more predictive splits that you can possibly look at is how a player does on hard courses versus how they do on easy courses. So even beyond like the similarities in rough or green speed, just the fact that you just named like some of the most difficult courses on tour, I think that will get you moving in a good direction as well.
So I'm just looking at strokes gained putting per round. Denny, Olesen, Ludwig, Cam Smith, Justin Rose.
All makes sense. I think Oberg is the one like surprised because he's the one guy in that list that isn't just like generally a great putter. But we've seen him putt really well at Augusta twice. One thing I will say there is like I think that sample size might be a little bit small on him. And the other thing is I can at least tell you that this year Ober gained a ton of strokes at Augusta, not because he was making all of his 8 to 10 footers, but because he rolled in like 40-foot bomb after 40-foot bomb, which we, of course, should not expect to carry over.
No, but his sample is weirdly. I went back to the past 36 rounds from those courses. He has 32 rounds from it.
Okay, that's pretty solid. So yeah, maybe there's more to it than I give credit for.
Yeah, like he's putted well at Bay Hill. He's putted excellently at the Masters. Memorial, he's actually been quite good. A bit of struggles at Riv, but that's about it.
Yeah, that sounds pretty solid then.
And then some more like overall skill set guys that like when you go down the list a little bit, like Sung Jae actually rates out really well here. And so does Harris English. Harris English feels like a random dude who could steal a US Open in his life.
He really does. I considered playing him last week because he popped so much in our splits, both for difficult golf courses and for fast greens. So that's definitely a name that we should be mentioning here.
And then, as I brought up to you on the Canadian Open show about guys I was thinking about saving for the US Open, Robert McIntyre is there once again as a guy who putts well at all these courses.
Yeah, I like the McIntyre call. And he also very much fits the accuracy is going to be even more important than distance, but he's got the length to some degree too, especially if we're getting a lot of run out, because he hits like a low penetrating, like heavy ball that is always going to run out well when he hits the fairway. Yeah,
the other guys that you would expect to be up there, Burns is up there, Leishman is actually up there, but his stats are from way back, and he's won at Bay Hill, so that probably helps. Rasmus Højgaard, although his sample is 4 rounds from Augusta this year. Straka, Xander, Morikawa, Ben Griffin, Dietrich, Victor Hovland, John Rahm, Bryson. I feel like I've asked this question 100 times to 100 people, and I just want someone to tell me yes, and I want to pull the trigger, but Bryson at 11-1 feels like the bet.
I think it's a solid bet, but I don't know that I'd bet it just because I think Rory and Scotty are a tier above him this time around.
But they're priced that way. Like everything has to be price dependent at the same time. That if
100%.
If Scotty's going to be 2.5-1 to win the U.S. Open, like although he probably is going to win, like I simply cannot bet that especially at a major. Like if it was when he was that much at the CJ Cup, I was like, pass. But now I'm not going to pass. If I wouldn't bet it then against like the world's worst field, you think that I'm going to bet it against the world's best field?
I 100% agree with that. My point isn't that we should be betting Scotty or Rory instead. It's just that they're taking so much win equity that I think 11 is probably fair to Bryson.
And there's very few players that you're going to get fair odds on.
Right.
What would Scheffler have to be for you to bet him this week?
Goodness.
5?
5.
And 5 is what? A 5? What is that win equity wise?
That's 1 out of
20%.
6. So probably like 16.67% or something like that.
Which is probably right, or maybe even a little low with the way that he's playing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like this is kind of just a personal preference, but I'm only going to bet someone that high on the odds board when I know that it's good value. And probably I have to know that it's like tremendous value, not just a 10% edge or something like that.
All right. Any final thoughts about Oakmont or any experiences from Oakmont you'd like to share?
One of the difficulties that I had on the golf course was that I noticed that week, the way it was set up for the Pennsylvania Open, misses just off the fairway were a lot worse than misses 20 to 30 yards off the fairway.
Into the gallery?
Definitely into the gallery. But we, of course, didn't have a gallery. It was just that the rough was thicker right off the fairway. And then you also have those like the literal ditches that it's just like fescue rough and you're lucky to find the ball in them. Whereas I played with 2 members that week and they were purposely hitting these like low draws 30 yards right of the fairway, knowing that that was the thinner rough. My guess is for the US Open, that will not be the case, that the rough will be disastrous everywhere. But to your point, like if there are a lot of galleries there, we might see better lies 30 yards off the fairway than 5 yards off the fairway, which could give bombers even more of an advantage if they can just say, screw the fairway, I'm hitting it over there and I'm just hitting it as far as I can. So that will definitely be something I want to look out for. And it might be something like we might be able to see that just by watching replays of the last time it was at Oakmont.
I was going to bring this up. DJ's worst holes came from when he just rolled off the fairway because he ended up in terrible, not only terrible lies, but like weird stances because there's bunkers everywhere. And the times that he was just able to easily make pars when he really overcooked it. Like he overcooked a 4-iron that went into a concession stand and he had to take the drop from like over there. It was like, yeah, no problem.
And honestly, like that might be one of the best things to look out for Bryson, because if he has license to just hit it as far as he can and hit it 30 yards right of the fairway or 30 yards left of the fairway and play from a bad lie in the rough instead of a horrible lie, he will probably take that opportunity and do very well with it. But again, my guess, if I had to say right now, is that the rough is going to be so bad, it doesn't matter if you hit it where the gallery was, it's going to be awful everywhere. And there will be that much of a premium on actually hitting fairways. And then I want the guys that we've largely talked about. And my other guess there is, like, especially on DraftKings, that's probably where the edge will be, because nobody's going to go into Oakmont and pick their lineup thinking that distance doesn't matter. Everyone's going to think that distance matters a ton, and it will. But you see some of the best golfers in the world who continue to have a lot of success without distance. And if they slip through the cracks, I'll be on those guys instead.
Well, we've heard from the people who have played the course, who know the most about this stuff. So let's try to break this down statistically using the help of Fantasy National. FantasyNational.com/Mayo to get yourself 20% off and get access to all of the tools. I've already created a U.S. Open model. We'll see what it is. Bring it up on the screen right now for you. Strokes gained off the tee, 15. Driving distance, 10%. Fairways gained, 5%. Might even jack that up a little bit for Oakmont. I'm going to, just to get some more of that middling type chess player that Keith and I talked about a little bit earlier. Strokes gained approach 20%, proximity, the long proximity, 175 yards at 200, 10%, 200 plus at 10%, around the green at 10%, long par fours, 400 to 500 yards. And then I have 100 to 200, 100 to 125 proximity, but I'm actually going to shrink that down a little bit and add in a new proximity range as well of 75 to 100 and split the difference. I don't necessarily want to weight these too much. I'm going to put them at 3% apiece, but there's going to be a lot of just mashing it out of this rough, and you're going to be in these awkward ranges. We saw a lot of that in 2016. I would expect to see more of that in 2025. Unsurprisingly, over the past 36 rounds, Scotty is number one. That's followed by Bryson, Brooks, Clanton, who I'm not even sure is in the field or not, Connors, Lowry, Neiman, Keegan, Damon, Berger, Straka, Mito, who, again, I don't think he's in the field. We have it just because the official field hasn't been announced as of the time of this recording. I'm just using the odds right now. So the odds will try to get you with some of these guys. Fleetwood, Hatton, Siwoo, Rory comes in at 16, mainly because of the lack of fairways and the incredible lack of just bad proximity, although longer term the approach play is good, as we can see with Rory coming in, and we'll see how he finishes up in Canada if it's just been kind of a lapse. His approach play has been kind of ass since he won the Masters. Now, before that, it was tremendous, and at the Masters, it was tremendous, but he just really hasn't had his A game since winning the Masters, and that's not necessarily a path that you want to go into. We spoke about Dustin off the top and what he did coming in to Oakmont in 2016, and he was just crushing it tee to green every single week. It's actually probably something I can throw in. I'm going to weight it at 0 just because I feel like I have tee to green handled with most of the other stats, and just to throw in there so I can see just tee to green. Are there guys that maybe are doing a little bit better than we thought? Let's see. Rory, Connors, Lowry, Neiman, Bryson, Keegan. Many of the same guys, because I had accounted for tee to green already, that would pop up. You got Ryan Gerard, Henley, JT, Henley. Bud Cauley is up there as well. Kitayama, Jordan Spieth, Cantley, Reed, Hideki, Rahm, Thorbjorn. Of note, too, and there's my guy, Robert McIntyre. I keep kind of circling back to him over and over just to see what's kind of going on. I wish that the fairways were a little bit better. Maybe they are in a smaller sample, and we'll try to break this through with harder courses as well. You can always use the U.S. Open tab down at the bottom as well. 100% of U.S. Opens have been played at the U.S. Open. That is good to know when we're breaking down the field. We don't want to have the wrong information coming in. So let's just actually run this. We're not going to go past 36. Let's go past 12, past 3 U.S. Opens, and use this model. And we're going to sort by U.S. Opens only as we go through it, and click on that very helpful U.S. Open tab and see what that spits us out. Obviously, the winners are going to be very good, so Wyndham Clark will be overrepresented in this. But other than that, let's see. Yeah, we can just run. We can run how everyone is. 3-1 for Scotty. It's so low. The 11-1 I can get on Bryson may actually end up being the play. So we can see them in terms of odds, how they rate out. The only guys with... So Rory at U.S. Opens is top 10 in this field in fairways, which is kind of surprising considering Scotty, who is best known for his accuracy of this top group, is T61. And it's going to be a lot of talk this week about how... And it's been mentioned how Scotty is inevitable at these things. However... I don't have putting in this. I should probably throw putting into this just to take a look. And as Blickle pointed out, that there's going to be the key putting ranges, the more predictive putting ranges. And mainly for me, it's going to be 5 to 10 feet. That's the only one I'm super concerned about. I've already mentioned those lag putting stats off the top that Drew Matthews was so nice to provide to me. It's because everything got taken off. Let's try to rejig this up a little bit just for this specific one. We probably don't want to wait 10 to 50, 5 to 10 at 27%. We'll just throw that in. Just go back to what we had before. Overweighting on approach, overweighting off the tee, strokes gain, and overweighting distance, and bumping up fairways a little bit more. And just see what that spits us out for just U.S. Open players. And hopefully that can make a little bit of a difference. So it's Rory, Hideki, Scotty, Xander, Morikawa, Rahm, Hovland, Brooks, Bryson, Dustin. And this is from the past 12 rounds of playing U.S. Opens. Now, for some players, I don't think Dustin's made the cut every single time. He has made the cut almost every single time. So he goes back to when we start getting some like weighted numbers. And that's also one of the things about the US Open. We do not have the strokes gain data from 2022, but we do from 2020 on. So that is very helpful when we're digging through some of these stats. So if you did really well in 2022, you're going to be underrepresented by this model at the moment. So 5 to 10 feet putting, Reed, Pavon, and that's in his 12 rounds. He's been very good at these short putts on USGA greens. Morikawa, Clark, Webb, Clanton in his 4 rounds. Scotty has just been dominant from this range, so it's crazy to think that he hasn't won one of these already. Griot, Lauer ended up qualifying. Hovland, Cantlay. Nick Taylor. Nick Taylor's so strange because he's become one of the better accuracy players on tour in 2025 and very good with his long irons. But you can see he's 156th of, I don't know how many players that they had. There's only 156 players in the field, but there's 162 in the system right now, which doesn't include some of the players that have not actually qualified, and they'll get weeded out as it goes along. Minwoo up there as well in his 12 rounds. So it's interesting to see because there's going to be so many par putts from this key range. Like, how many of these can you make? That's going to keep you afloat. The tee to green is going to get you there, but when the time comes to make a critical putt or two, can you make it? And these are the guys that have done it at the U.S. Open over their past 12 rounds, so 3 to 5 years in terms of a sample. Tee to green, it's Rory, then it's Xander, then it's Hideki. Brooks and Morikawa end up being the top 5 in that time span. I don't even remember which U.S. Open's Morikawa was awesome at. I think he's just been very good at all of them. I know he was in contention at Torrey, but other than that, let's see. Yeah, the 2022 U.S. Open, that's the Rahm year. That's the one at Torrey that we don't have. No, that was at the Country Club. That was at Brookline. Okay, that makes more sense. 2021 was the John Rahm year. Now, I just want to make sure I don't get this completely. Yeah, that was Torrey Pines. And then Fitzpatrick ends up winning in 2022. So 5, the approach play has been great. The off the tee has been great. The putting's been great. Frankly, he does have 2 top 5s in his past 4 appearances at the U.S. Open. But even in 2023, it just seems like these numbers really should have generated a better result than 14th. But I guess that's LA Country Club for you guys. Just had astonishing weeks when there was opening round 62s on the board. So back to that, Sergio, Dustin, Guido, Henley, Tom Kim, Berger. Berger, I just think is very interesting this week as that other level of player. Obviously, he's going to be one of the more accurate players in the field. We can see he's been 33rd at U.S. Opens and fairways. He's been 7th in approach over that time. And just overall, when you take a look at what he's been doing throughout the course of the season, the putter has gone cold on him, which is not great to see considering he's usually a better than average putter on tour. Memorial, although it probably comps the best to this event at the U.S. Open, could just be a bad week for him. He's missed 2 cuts in a row coming in, but that doesn't mean he can't grind out a T16 at this event, which is useless for the betting market, obviously, but it could be very good for DraftKings purposes as we start to go down the list a little bit. I mentioned Minwoo when I brought up the ball striking and ball speed numbers. His longer proximity has been pretty good. Off the tee, obviously, has been very, very good. Second, third in distance, 20th in that short range putting. This is kind of the collection of guys that I'd want to be around. Now, the wedge play when he needs to save himself, not great. Well below average at U.S. Opens in those numbers. Let's see who rates out the best. Overall, Keimer, weirdly, who I think is up in terms of U.S. Opens. So he's probably not in the field. Scotty. Puig didn't end up qualifying. Adam Hadwin is up there. Hideki rates out very well in both, and so does Pavon. Okay, that's really interesting. So this is how Pavon has kind of done it over the years, is what's making him. Zach Johnson was another one who had a very good run at U.S. Opens, and it seems like Pavon, at least in the way that he has played his first three, is mimicking something very similar to that. Like, he's not going to have a ton of distance. He's not poor in distance, but very average, slightly above in approach play, 42nd in this field, but top 20 in fairways, best in the field from 100 to 125, top 10 in the field from 75 to 100, and second in that short range putting. This is how you don't make bogeys. You don't put yourself in awful positions. You're not going to score a bunch, but we're not looking for guys who score a bunch this week, although there are going to be scoring holes, as we saw in the Flyover, that you can take advantage of some of them, and some guys are going to have some low rounds, but it's about what happens when you don't have your best stuff. How can you just tread right around par? The Pavon method is kind of proven itself at U.S. Opens right now. That's why he rates out 15th in the U.S. Open model at U.S. Opens only. You can see Straka is actually up there as well from just U.S. Opens. He's 19th. Obviously, I've bet him to win. I would like to see his putting improve from 5 to 10 feet on these USGA surfaces, but frankly, he just seems like a better player overall than he has been over the course of his career. So Connors is fourth, and let's take a look at who's been hitting the fairways at U.S. Opens. Todd Morikawa, Siwoo, Connors, Straka, Sungjae. Sungjae is going to be a very interesting one. We'll see how he does in Canada. But his iron play is awful. Yeah, I will show you right now how awful his iron play has been. He's just been piecing it together. Those aren't normally the types of players that I like to back. Like, he's averaging minus 2.7 strokes per start over his last 5 tournaments. He hasn't gained strokes since the Cognizant, a tournament in which he missed the cut. The putting's been good. The driving has been outstanding. He's in every fairway, and the chipping has been out of this world good. Can that keep up at a U.S. Open? I'm dubious, but this is the sort of player that all of a sudden, he was even T16 at Memorial last week, despite, well, he gained 8 strokes around the green. That's why he ended up there. And we've seen top-end performances from him doing it already. He did it at the Masters earlier this year, that if he just putts well, everything else that he's been doing, and just maybe you can get like this CJ Cup week where it's like a 0.5 on approach. As long as he doesn't bury himself on approach, he should be fine. But he's giving himself easy outs off the tee. He's not putting himself in danger. These are the chess players, again, that we were talking about. Hovland's been very good at U.S. Opens off the tee, as have Rory and Ludwig. Harman and Henley are there as well. Lucas Glover, Matt Kuchar, Billy Horschel, who's obviously not playing. He's injured right now. Aaron Rai, I keep kind of mentioning his name. Been very good at the short putts at the U.S. Open, but goes into this week, when you take a look at the 2025 stats, as the most accurate player in the field. Keith and I actually talked off air about how, weirdly, one of these big events probably sets up better for Tommy Fleetwood to get his first American win than your run-of-the-mill generic event that seemingly sets up really well for him, be it Colonial or Heritage or all of the close calls that he's had. Just you ramp up the conditions, all of a sudden he starts looking a lot better. So we're going to take off the U.S. Open right now, and we're just going to look at it again now that we've added putting in to see if that changes anything over the past 12 rounds. So we looked at past 36. Now we're going to look at past 12. Scotty and Bryson are 1-2. Mito not playing. Then you got Hatton, Kitayama, Straka, Ben Griffin, Davis Riley, John Peterson, Patrick Cantlay. There's Keegan again. Although the putting has been really bad, the short putting hasn't been as big of a factor, so maybe that's all right. You see Rory Pendrith and Benjamin James. Just like, Pendrith's almost dead last from 5 to 10 putting over the past 12 rounds, which seems kind of amazing to think about, that it really shouldn't be that way for a guy that's struggling on the greens this year. Lowry, big shocker, 161st. Wouldn't have guessed that one. Maybe I would have. I think all of you would have if I asked you who the guy is the worst from putting 5 to 10 feet. And the problem is he gives himself so many opportunities from that range that it kind of just absolutely destroys him. It makes it seem even worse than it is. Is the best player short term on the long, hard par fours, though, 450 to 500 yards. So shorter term, this is how it's looking right now. You can see Berger kicking around, Gerard and Clanton, and Ryan Fox. Ryan Fox is another one that we did not mention as a part of that ball speed conversation, but rates out top 25 in this field. He's going to have the distance. He has what generally is a very good short game. It's been pretty middling lately, but he is someone who can get it up and down, plays long par fours really, really well, and sometimes he brings his putter, sometimes he does not, but he is someone who goes on absolute tears. We saw this in Europe when he was winning over there, that he'd be great for about 6 weeks, then fall off the face of the earth. Currently, he had the win to get into the PGA Championship and then came top 30 at a major, top 20 last week at Memorial. The approach play has been stellar. The off the tee lacked a little bit at Memorial, but that did lean more accuracy over distance. Muirfield Village always does. That you add his extra distance back in this week, that could end up being something that's very key for him and very big to separate him apart. So I do like Ryan Fox. I'm not going to bet him at 150 to 1, but when I start thinking about top 20s, guys to make the cut, the types of players I want to target, Ryan Fox over someone like, Keith Mitchell kind of rates out almost exactly the same. It's just I have too much of an experience with Keith Mitchell, especially over the last 3 years, that just doesn't feel good at all. To back him in Canada is one thing, and I didn't even want to do that. To back him at the U.S. Open seems kind of even worse. He's another one. I don't know if he actually even qualified for this field. Bobby Mack is up there as well. I like Bobby Mack this week. Just the approach play continues to be really, really strong. And the around the green game has not been very good, but historically has been very good in that regard. And I think that the conditions set up really well for him. So that's the past 12 rounds overall heading into the tournament. Now what we're going to do is take the past 24 rounds, which will give less credit to live players and European players, because obviously they don't have stats from anything, but we need to look at difficult courses. Who plays well at difficult courses? We'll look at it from the model perspective first, and then we're going to take a look at the strokes gain perspective just to see who is gaining the most strokes, because sometimes guys do it a little bit here, a little bit there, but Scotty is number 1, Rory is number 2, Bryson is number 3. The top 3 players in the world, when you get them to courses that score hard relative to par, they're the best 3 players. They're also 1, 3, and 2 in strokes gained tee to green over that time. So that's why they're up there. After that, and I think this is probably the best representation that we've seen so far of what the odds dictate, what sentiment dictates, and how the numbers are actually lining up. So I'm actually very interested in how the rest of the top 25 shakes out from here, because we've now created a model in conditions where we know the proven performers now come out at the top. So we're trying to test around to see what works the best with this. Ludwig is next at number 4. Connors is number 5. Rahm is number 6. Poor Mito gets so much credit for like a few really good rounds. But after that, it's still Brooks, Shane, Keegan, Hatton, then into Davis Riley, Bud Colley, Seb Straka, Morikawa. That's your top 15. So I've said that I'm probably going to bet Bryson. I've already bet on Straka. So that's going to be an 11 to 1 for me and an 80 to 1 for me. How do I fill out the rest? Well, it depends on what Lowry's number is and what Keegan's number is. Those would be my 2 main targets after that. You can see that Bud Colley is 210 to 1. That I actually think is very intriguing. Not so much as a win, but if you can get a top 10, and I know that if you play on books that have each ways at the moment, now we're in a situation where you can bet him to win at 200 to 1 and take his 8 places. And I know I speak about this every major that comes along, but I think it's important to reinforce for new people that are watching. I don't know what the top 10 on him is right now, but I can tell you if you get 1/5 the odds for his top 8 at 200 to 1, it will be 40 to 1. I would guess that his top 10 number is less than half than that. It's probably 16 to 1. 15 to 1. So you're still better off betting, although you do lose the 2 places and you might get chopped as a part of that if too many people tie for that each way, but you get chopped on the top 10 unless you play at certain books which don't have dead heat rules. But I'd be willing to take 3.5 times the payout on the top 8 and have the upside equity of the win for exactly the same amount of money that I would need to bet on the top 10. That's always how I like to play it, and Bud Colley seems to be one of the better options for that. The one thing that he's not doing really well coming into this at hard courses is his long proximity, but if we go take a look at what courses are actually being mentioned and try to take a look at it then, he did very poorly on that at Memorial, but did very well from the 175 to 200. Charles Schwab played harder on 2 of the 4 days, the PGA Championship, Valero, the Players. So all of his rounds do account for this year and digging a little bit back into last year. And frankly, I'm not too concerned about Bud Colley from a year ago. He was still working his way back from that back injury. He seems to be fully healthy at the moment. So he is a player that I'm going to like this week near the bottom, DraftKings-wise, placement market, and maybe that each way to try to get greedy. It's frankly, honestly, it's probably a bad bet. You know what? It is a bad bet. Doesn't mean I'm not going to make it. These are the bets that I like to make. Who else rates out well? Xander, Hoagie, Hovland, Finau. Henley is up there as well, another chess-type player that we've spoken about a few times. Hideki, Damon, Dustin, Neiman. So Maverick McNeely. Weird to see that his short-range putting is so bad at these hard courses over the past 24 rounds. And we know that he is one of, I don't want to say the premier putters on the PGA Tour, but he's very, very good. He has not been as good lately. He's had some big, big misses, but he's also had some big spikes. So 5th at Memorial, that is a tournament like when I spoke to Blickle. Muirfield Village, Augusta National, Bay Hill, and Riviera are probably the putting stats that I want to look at. So let's see how he did at those. The Masters, lost a bunch. I believe it was his debut at the Masters sometimes. That does take getting acclimated a little bit. So at Memorial, he gained this year after having a bad go in his first time through. At the U.S. Open, the last time he played in the U.S. Open was 2017. No strokes gained data from there. The Genesis was at Torrey Pines this year, so that doesn't really do us any good. But at Riviera, in his 2 appearances, he's gained 2.4 once. Then he gained 8.4 in 2022. At the Arnold Palmer, he has gained each of the past 3 years on the green. So hopefully the putting isn't so much of an issue for someone like Mav McNeely. As you can see, off the tee has been very good. Better distance than fairways at these harder courses, but that's about what you would expect. Tends to play better with smaller greens, and these are giant greens, but I'm willing to overlook that a little bit. He comes 17th in tee to green coming into the week for that. It's funny because Sepp is 45th on these courses, despite still ranking out at 14th, because I have given so much weight to driving distance, and frankly, he just doesn't do that all that well, and is around the green at these harder courses has been atrocious. 152nd of the 162 players I'm looking at right now, and he has bled strokes around the green in 6 straight events. So you have to start thinking to yourself, how is he going to have an out here? And I do think that the thick rough, at least green side, will mitigate some of the touch that people have. You're not going to be able to spin the ball. You're not going to be able to get it to stop. So the closest I can have to that, unless I sort by shaved surfaces, if he has to lay up a bunch, which I don't want him doing. Now, it's going to happen to everyone periodically, but a player like Straka, you take him because he's second in fairways. So presumably he's going to have better lies to go hit greens in regulation over time, considering he's top 10 in approach to go along with it. He's going to have to rely on those longer irons, which has not been a problem for him. Now, if it becomes a problem, he's not going to win anyway, so I don't care how he chips. So for me, he's going to have to be up there in greens and regulation. And when you take a look at a 75 to 100 and 100 to 125, it's that if that's where a hack out distance is, he's top 45 in the field in both of those categories. So at least I feel like he has some outs that way, and he's currently riding a super hot putter coming into it. Other players to look at, Pendrith and Reed, Ryan Cantlay. I've mentioned Aaron Rye's name like 50 times on this show, so I'm going to just put a little star next to his name. He's that other type of player that I do like. Nikolai, Berger, Griot, Fox, Sergio Spieth. There is Joe Highsmith. As Keith pointed out, Joe Highsmith and Jacob Bridgman both having success making it to the knockout round of the USAM that was held here when they were playing. Davis Thompson, Siwoo. Our guy, Andrew Novak, is someone that we can look at. He does have the 24 rounds at the difficult courses, and he has better odds than Adam Scott to win this week. he has better odds than a lot of guys to win this week. And then you see Bobby Mack ends up through now. We're into the Noren, Fleetwood, Jordan Smith, Matt Fitzpatrick. That rounds out the top 50. So this is probably the base of names I want to start building around as we go through both DraftKings, starting to look at placements to play to make or to miss underdog wise to miss the cut parlay. I much prefer the to miss the cut parlay to the to make the cut parlay at the US Open because of fewer players making the cut and just the randomness and how hard this can get, that one or two holes can absolutely take you out of this tournament. If you're interested in that, if you do want to play these make the cut, miss the cut parlays and you live in a state that doesn't offer that, Underdog does offer that the week of on the fantasy app. You can play the fantasy props together, build out as many as 8 that you like. If you use code Mayo now at Underdog, you'll get a deposit bonus of up to $1,000 and go fire away at some make the cut, miss the cut parlays, and you'll get a free pick to throw it into it. Now, the worst players in the field based in this model, and this is maybe another way to look at it as well. It doesn't mean all these guys are going to miss the cut, but it's just not working for them. Hadwin, Rasmus Højgaard, Ricky Fowler, Taylor Moore, Thirsty Lawrence. Jason Day rates out atrociously in this. He's 156th. Brian Campbell, Andrew Putnam, EVR. Shockingly, Nick Dunlap is not last. Shank, Wallace, Nick Taylor, Phil, Ryan McCormick. He's the captain now. Captain Phillips is down there. Eric Cole, Max Homa, Wyndham Clark. Despite being 9th in distance, 13th off the tee, everything else sucks for what he's doing right now. Dietrich is another one. Cam Davis, Trevor Cohn. Harmon rates out poorly. Burns rates out poorly. I mean, I'm just going through the guys that you might be considering this week. Tiger Woods, not playing, but he does rate out poorly. Justin Rose, Justin Thomas, Cam Smith, Sung Jae, Ben An. Who else do we got here? Spawn, Akshay Poston, Nicholas Norgard Muller. These guys have 0 or 1 round, so I'm not too concerned about that. And Akshay's name is spelled wrong, so I'm guessing that's not him. Let's see. Akshay. Yeah, his name is just spelled wrong. It's because it's imported from the site that spells his name wrong. That's why. So if you're trying to find Akshay, wait until the full field is actually posted, or the DraftKings prices come down with the real field, because they won't have misspellings on names on their end, therefore not registering it in our system. I'm doing this a little bit earlier because I got the live show coming up this weekend. Wanted to make sure that the research show got out. So that's a look at the bottom of the board as we're going through, and just a lot of guys with 0 rounds played under these difficult relative to par conditions. So now we've taken a look at difficult courses, how they play out within the model. Ditto with how the US Open plays out. We're just now going to look at simple strokes gained, and we're probably going to look at strokes gained total, because that might tell a little bit of a different story. We're going to keep it at difficult settings relative to par. We're going to look at past 24 rounds overall and just take a look at scoring average. Who has been the best and by how much? Scheffler has been by far the best, almost gaining 3 strokes per round in difficult conditions. Bryson is 2, Lowry is 3, Connors is 4, Rory is 5 in overall strokes gained. Those are the 5 players gaining over 2 strokes per round in strokes gained total in difficult conditions. Then there is a massive drop off to number 6. So Rory is 2.12 per round. Russell Henley is 6th. He's 1.57 per round. So then you have this collection from Henley down to all within a quarter point per round of each other. Henley, Rahm, Xander, Morikawa. There's Ryan Fox again. So again, the star's already there next to his name. There's Ryan Gerard again. I'm now going to star him because he has now popped up in 3 or 4 different iterations that we've looked at. Bud Cauley is up there as well. Ludwig, Riley, Burns, Clanton, Hatton, Cantlay. Keegan continues to be there, so we're going to add him to the list. Patrick Reed continues to rate out well in all of these metrics too. I do worry about him a little bit at the US Open, because when things go bad for him, they go really, really bad. Not necessarily the best type of player that I want. Mav McNeely is up there, as is Denny. Denny is another one of those accuracy hot putter players that I could see doing very well again this week. If you're trying to find the Zach Johnson, Brendan Todd, the lesser Morikawas of the world, that's kind of the role that Denny fits on tour right now, and especially amongst this field. There's Harris English, who I've talked up a bit on this show, another one that with the 8 placings you might be able to catch. He's 125 to 1 right now. By the time that the odds reset on Monday, he may be 150. That would probably be a go for me to get that top 8 to go along with it, because I think that I could most definitely see him coming T3 at this US Open. And if he comes T3, he has a chance to win, more than likely, that he will just continue to grind it out. We've seen Hoagie's name a few times. We've seen Spieth's name a few times. times. I'm not super interested in that. Straka is another one that trends is in the positives along with Neiman and McIntyre and Sungjae. If we shrink the size down a little bit, and this might just be all noise, we take samples this small of 12 rounds. But if we just redo that again, continuing on difficult courses, Scotty separates himself a little bit more. He's now over 3 strokes gained per round. Rory, Bryson, and Ben Griffin are the only 3 players gaining more than 2. But once again, Scotty 3.2, Rory 2.8, Bryson 2.7, and then Ben Griffin at number 4 is 2.0. So a massive drop off on the per round performance from the top 3, the 3 favorites, and everyone else down the list. Ryan Gerard continues to be up there. Hovland and Scheffler make their way up, as does Connors and Lowry continue to be there. John Rahm continues to be there. Ryan Fox moves up. Harris English moves up. Davis Riley moves up. And then all of a sudden, here's an appearance from Fleetwood. Straka gets significantly better the shorter we make the sample because he has become a bit of a different player over the course of time. McNeely moves up. Pendrith continues to move up. Bradley moves down a little bit, but still very good in these numbers. Wallace, Siwoo, Grazerman, Bud Colley continues to be there too, as does Matt McCarty, who's probably going to be like $5,400 on DraftKings. You can see Russell Henley takes a precipitous drop. He seems to be the biggest faller in the short term of this mix. There's Aaron Rye as well, just continuing to be 0.4 strokes. That's not enough to get it done, but it's enough to tread water and be good enough as we go through this. That will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. I hope you enjoyed the full ride. You got the information you need to set yourself up to make your own decisions for Oakmont and the U.S. Open this week. Tomorrow, Andrew Novak, full interview on the show. Me playing the sim with my golf coach, going hole by hole for Oakmont and talking about which players are set up, where to miss, where not to miss. That's going to be a fun show. That comes out on Saturday. Sunday, I have a filler show in between as a palate cleanser, and then we're here for the real deal stretch run. Me, Cust, and Jeff on Monday. Best bets with Rosin Cam on Tuesday. Tambo and DraftKings on Wednesday. Cut Sweat live on the Friday. We're blowing out U.S. Open week, and we need your help to share the show around. Anytime you see a show tweeted out, please retweet it. That gets you in the draw for those Pro Vs that I talked about. Maybe some other fun equipment, and maybe even some cash at the same time. So you might as well go do all of the giveaway stuff now. Leave your winner in the comment section. Go rate and review the audio podcast. Sub to Mayo Media Network. Smash the like and make sure you share everything around this week because it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I'm very excited for this U.S. Open. I just really want to strap in and watch it all. I want to embrace the carnage this week. All right? Thank you all for watching. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!